All right, everybody, how you doing? It's News Debate. I am Lee back with another show. Lots and lots of content in the last week, and hopefully a lot more content this month. I have had amazing success on my campaign, patreon.com/NEWZ debates. And that means that I'm giving back, trying to do more content this month. And I've also unveiled a new, or I guess for the first time, it's not a new version, a voice message system that you can also send text messages to. That number is 323-250-0867. So you can send text messages and leave voice messages during the show. You can also do it after the show, and I'll play them in the next show that I do. It's News Debate. I am Lee. Boy, there have been some big developments in stories we have discussed here on the show in the past 24 hours. I have a couple of videos prepared. I have a few news stories up from reputable news sources that we can take a look at. Oh yeah, looking forward to this show. But let's go ahead and say hello to patreon.com/NEWZ debate supporter Frankie J, who jumped in the room right when I got started. How you doing, Frankie?
I'm here, and life is good.
You know, you say life is good, Frankie. I feel like something happened in the last 24 hours that is not so agreeable with your life stance, your support of a certain franchise in the state of New York, in the city you used to live in, but you just moved. Man, those Buffalo Bills.
You know what, Lee? I'll tell you this. I was wrong with both my predictions. Where I was closest was the Kansas City game. It came down to 2 points. Just didn't go in favor of the Chargers. But Josh Allen broke more records yesterday.
The Bills game was 2 points. Didn't they lose by 2 points?
Yeah, they lost by 2, but they were down by like almost 20 at one point, and they came back. Josh Allen scored 6 touchdowns, 3 on his own and 3 passing touchdowns, which is another record. So, you know, we lost
at least
yesterday.
A few of those rushing touchdowns are right on the goal line. So
it counts as a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, you're right. It does count, but I wouldn't say he did it on his own. Revisionist history.
6 touchdowns, and it was I predicted that Matt Stafford would come out and swing the ball around, and he did it a little bit more than I would have wanted. But it was a good game. I mean, it took you right down to the last second, and
they were
I'm not hurt over the loss.
Games. They were both very good games.
I think they were the 2 best games of the week, like I predicted. So I felt good about my prediction because the rest of the games.
What was the Thursday game? I can't remember, but I enjoyed that one.
The Thursday game, I don't even remember.
That was a good one.
Was it
whatever
Detroit?
That was? I enjoyed. Oh, it was the Detroit game. Yeah, I like the Detroit because I like Detroit.
Yeah.
And now that the Bills have
like
lost
Detroit
to
too.
a bad team like the Rams, Detroit looks even better.
Well, I like Detroit. I've never not liked Detroit. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for them because of, losing.
Anyone who doesn't have a soft spot in their heart for the Lions does not have a heart. Everyone should like the Lions.
I would agree. But no, I like the Lions. I don't have a problem with them. In fact, I'm rooting for them. I think it would be a great Super Bowl, the Rust Belt, the Bills and the Lions. That would be an amazing Super Bowl. So, yesterday, it was fun to predict the games, and they were both close games and games of the week. So I look forward to the upcoming weekend and giving you my picks for that week. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, every week we do Frankie's football picks. He leaves me a voice message at 323-250-0867. Don't give it away yet, but I am very interested in because the next game is the Lions, right? Lions and the Bills. I'm interested in your thoughts for that one. Ooh, yeah.
Oh, I'll give them to you on that voicemail. Believe me.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Frank is joining us. We also have Glenn, friend of the show. Glenn, we're going to hear from Glenn here in a little bit. Stay with us, Glenn. over on stereo, I have a poll like I always do. The two options today. I'm glad they caught the United Healthcare CEO killer, or I'm disappointed they found him. My votes, I am disappointed that they found him. This whole, hey, no one really feels too bad for the CEO because, his company makes money by denying people healthcare. I don't think he's a good person. I don't know him personally. It doesn't mean he was not nice, but I don't think anyone who has his job could be a good person because you literally hurt people with your job. And he's been working for that company for like a couple decades or longer, something like that. Doesn't mean he deserved to die. Not saying that. But the whole, the guy
You know
came
what?
in and one
Let
second,
me,
Frankie.
let me.
The
Okay.
guy came in, you know, he wasn't working for the KGB, as I say, but he came in and he had a plan. He accomplished the plan. He rode off on an e-bike. He got out of town. They found video of him smiling and flirting with someone at the hostel. He went to Starbucks. He's a good-looking guy. Like it was like this story. It was so fascinating. And now we'll get to these details, but they apparently caught him, and the e-bike ride is over. Yeah. Um, Once again, he appears to be a murderer. Not endorsing that, but boy, if you're gonna commit a crime, he committed one that a lot of people can understand, and the e-bike ride is over. It's News Debate. I'm late. Boss 8 has joined us over on my Twitter space, one of my patreon.com/NEWZ debate supporters, just like Frankie J. Boss 8, we're looking forward to having you join us with your voice in the show. Yes, Frankie, you wanted to throw in?
Yeah, you had said you don't want to see someone get murdered, but how many people did he watch die under his watch? So there's two sides to every story. Assassinated for a reason. The guy had a smile on his face, rode his e-bike. So apparently he did what he wanted to do and it made him feel good. So this CEO that was murdered, you know, I don't want to say I condone it, but I don't have a problem with it. He
Yeah, I
watched
get you. I
millions.
also am hesitant to be like I condone it, but I kind of get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not upset about it. It's not something that I would. It's already out of my mind. I mean, he cared about nobody. So karma's a son of a bitch, like you would say, son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch. Yeah, no, it's whenever I say something like that, it's because something has gone wrong. But oh yeah, it's kind of fun to say that. Okay, so that's my hot take. We can get to that now, or we can get to something a little bit later. Frankie, you're the only Patreon supporter who's with us as a speaker right now. We'll get you your hot take first if you have one, and then we'll jump over to Glenn. Apostate Nate might just be listening and not be able to throw in with his voice right now. Frankie, do you have okay, so do you have a hot take, or do you want to update us? You sent me a message or two. You have moved from Buffalo to a retirement community around the Adirondacks, and it was a move you had to make. Financially, it made sense. You got over there, and you were telling us about it when you first got there. I had no idea it was a retirement community. I thought you were just moving there. You got to a retirement community. You have made some friends. So no pressure. We can go straight to a hot take, or we can give an update on what's going on your end.
Yeah, and it didn't take me long to settle in and become the new guy and become very noticed. It all started with being invited to the Thanksgiving feast that they put on here, and that I didn't factor in because we had made jokes in previous shows about the Cougars and the old women and all that stuff. but we never factored in
Lydia, look at that
that.
young Frankie J that just moved in with his hand
Right.
tattoos. I bet he has a big wait, never. Yes, those were the jokes I was making, was that you are
Yes.
younger than a lot of people there. And I bet they would be very fascinated by your appearance, your demeanor, and your life
Yep.
stories that you can tell.
Yeah, and I, beyond my imagination, I did not factor in that these old people have children that are adults and within my age range. And yeah, so within 2 weeks I've established my weed hookup any kind I want, anytime I want. I don't have to go anywhere except down the hall. I found a place to put my
So really
clones to
quickly,
grow.
let's 1 second. Let's do one at a time here. So you found a
Okay.
weed hookup. So does that mean some old lady or some old guy is selling weed in the retirement home?
He doesn't even sell it. He just gives it away.
No,
Yeah,
no.
it's true. It's
I I
stupid.
I think you lucked out here, Frankie, but whoever owns that retirement home needs to put that on the brochure. We got an old guy who just gives away weed on the brochure. He should be right on the front cover of the brochure.
I agree. I scored big here. It's a great place to live. I like it so far. It's peaceful, it's quiet, and it's turning out to be a good fit for Frankie J. So yeah,
Okay,
I'll
so
leave it
you
at
you
that for
found an
them.
old guy who gives you weed. You were saying that you borrowed one of the residents' daughter's weed pens, so you didn't have to go out into your truck to smoke. But this old guy who gives you weed, you got to go outside to smoke that, right?
Yeah, and it's fine. It's 20 steps out the door and to my truck, so it's not that big of a deal. And I
You
get
have to
fresh air.
walk further to smoke the weed than to get the free weed.
Pretty much, yeah. It's 4 doors down to go outside to my truck, and I think 8 or 9 doors down the other way to the hookup. So either way, it's all in the same building. I don't
And
have to
then you
walk in the
you
weather.
you also said a moment ago that you found a new place to put your plants because you're getting free weed, but in your old home in
Yes,
Buffalo, you grew weed in your backyard because New York
right,
State allows you to grow so many plants now per person.
right,
So you found
right.
someone who is letting you grow weed.
Yes, he has. His second bedroom is a full professional, legit grow room, and he allowed me to place my clones in there, so they'll start to flourish. It's gonna be awesome.
And is this also someone who lives in the retirement community?
Yes, it's the same guy.
Okay, okay, so it's the same guy. So my
Yeah.
question is, when you pay the retirement community, do you have to pay like rent plus utilities, or is it all one fee?
Uh, I pay my rent and just electric. Everything
Okay,
else is included.
because that's my question. Then his electric must be really high because he has grow lights.
Well, he uses all LED, so his electric bill, I think he said doesn't exceed 150 or something like that, which isn't bad. So, he does it efficiently. He knows what he's doing, and it's a smooth operation for sure. But yeah,
Wow,
so
wow,
it only took me 2 weeks to
wow!
fall into place.
Only took it 2 weeks to fall into place. So you got the retirement community. By the way, Bjorn has joined us over on stereo, and I'm trying to call him to bring him up as a co-host. Clearly did not work. We'll try again. So we'll be hearing from patreon.com/NEWZ NEWZ debate supporter and friend of the show, Bjorn, here in a bit, hopefully. So you got your weed hookup, and you also are growing plants in the weed hookup spare bedroom.
Yep,
What else is going on with? Because this is fascinating. You've posted some pictures. Looks beautiful. You got a lot of snow. You just had a great Thanksgiving with everybody in the retirement
yep,
home.
yep.
Any negatives? Any negative Nancy's? Negative Nates around there?
Not that I've noticed yet. No, people are all just nice to me here. I don't know if it's my presence, my personality. I'm approachable. I don't know what it is, but everybody's like overly friendly to me. and my dog goes up to everybody, and it's working out good so far.
Well, it
No
could
complaints.
be that everybody is really nice. That is possible, but also you have tattoos down to your hands. They could be afraid that you're going to rob them. I mean, that is a real possibility.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Linda,
I don't
did you
think
see
that's the
Frankie
case.
J, the criminal, moved into our retirement community? Oh, we should all be really nice to him so he won't murder us in our sleep. Exactly. Mm.
Hey, whatever works. If it makes it easier for me, I'll let it fly. But no, I'm enjoying it. I like it. It was a good move to make. I like the nature here, the low population. Little town. It's really good. I like it.
Gerard?
Fantastic. Well, sounds like someone's in a Kmart. Oh, is this Bjorn? Bjorn, do you want to jump in over on stereo? Great to have you.
They caught the killer, CEO killer. Luigi Mangione.
Yes. So give me your thoughts on that. We mentioned that really quickly at the top of the show, I think before you joined. I said the e-bike ride is
Sorry,
over.
I didn't. I
The
thought I was
joyride
muted. Sorry about that.
No worries. No, that's okay. All the jokes about how attractive he is and the fact that people kind of can understand why you'd want to take out the CEO of a healthcare company that makes money by denying people healthcare. What are your thoughts, Bjorn?
Yeah, I mean, really, I think we're going to figure out motivation. An article I read, he was former Ivy League grad, and one of his relatives had bad experiences with the medical industry, and had, he had a ghost gun and passports and IDs and other things like that. So clearly, he was, very premeditated. I'm sure that he thought he could get away from uh, the authorities or elude the officials, as I think all criminals do. But in this high profile of a case, you know, so rare, they're going to find you, especially since he clearly wasn't perfect with, showing off his face at the hostel. So, I mean, I thought they, figured they would catch him after a while, but they definitely did. So, yeah, again, don't condone any sort of killing of CEOs over things like this, but it'll be interesting to see, whenever maybe we'll hear him speak or hear more about his motivation specifically, if it was United Healthcare or like, you know, CEOs in general of insurance companies. But pretty wild. Luigi taken down.
Yeah, I mean, this is I said the e-bike ride is over. That's a reference to he escaped to Central Park on an e-bike. But in one way, the e-bike ride has just begun, everybody. So the second Joker movie with Lady Gaga is not great. I'm glad I saw it because I enjoyed the first one so much, but it's just very disappointing. But one interesting thing is and it's not giving anything away. The entire movie revolves around the trial for the crimes he committed in the first movie. And the way that plays out is actually interesting. That's one of the better parts of the movie. Is this Luigi guy? It's, rather than people dressing up like the Joker, are people going to dress up like Mario and Luigi and stand outside the courtroom and wreak havoc? I mean, this is just the beginning. So they caught him, and it seems to be him. Um, I mean, how many months, years until the trial? Um, what is he going to say in his own defense? Um, I mean, if I was a media executive right now, I'd be rubbing my hands together and be good, good. I mean, this is going to be some compelling TV. We're going to have constant updates. I to be fair, is he going to be Epsteined? Is he gonna show up dead in his cell? United Healthcare has a lot of power. I think Epstein was murdered. You think this guy is going to last too long? I mean, plus maybe someone would take him out in jail. Like, what kind of protection is he going to have in the slammer? This is in so many ways. It's just beginning.
You know what, Lee? I have to say this. I don't think in prison he would be a target because he's not a rapist, a child molester, or anything like that. He killed the CEO of a shitty healthcare company.
Yeah.
And
Let me
I don't think
rephrase.
they get the greatest healthcare.
Be a target not because the prisoners want him dead, but because someone would get a prisoner to murder him. So, like, not killed by a prisoner the way you'd think a pedophile would be, or, I don't know, a snitch, something like that, but taken out by a prisoner because people who have power could get a prisoner to do something. I mean, I'm thinking out loud. I have no specific reason to do that.
Well,
but
he'll be a high-profile inmate. They'll keep him away from everybody.
You think Jeffrey Epstein wasn't a high-profile inmate? That he was alone.
Well, he was a
pay attention
scumbag.
to him.
Well, the guards didn't really care about him, so he wasn't a priority as far as protection. But this guy is more of a high-profile,
I don't think
person.
we agree on high-profile. Jeffrey Epstein, in many ways, was much more high-profile than this guy. Jeffrey Epstein had more money.
But he was a rapist of young kids.
Yeah, but you're not, Frankie. We're not talking about the same thing. So high-profile can mean many different things. So my point is if someone like Jeffrey Epstein can just be murdered, which is my opinion, but at the very least kill himself with no one watching and no video of it happening, I don't think for a second that this guy is safe. It doesn't mean that he's going to be murdered, but it's just as possible. And we can disagree on that, but I feel like you're not giving enough credit to the power that Jeffrey Epstein had. I mean, he apparently did this for years and years and years and had that former girlfriend help him, and she went to jail for it. Like, he had powerful friends. I mean, like, he owned an island or two, at least one island. So I don't know if it can happen to Jeffrey Epstein. It can happen to some guy named Luigi who got caught in a McDonald's. Call me crazy. Let's jump over though. Let's jump over and hear more about this. This is like a local CBS station, I think. Really like the local news. Let's go with this from YouTube. This is the most updated that I found in a digestible video form, and then we'll get some more updates from the New York Post and maybe another. Oddly enough, I found the New York Post write-up to be the best, and it had a really good picture of him as well. But that's his face right there. Over here from WUSA in Washington, D.C., it's News Debate.
Breaking right now on WUSA 9 News at 4. Police in New York say they have arrested a, quote, strong person of interest in the brazen Manhattan killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO. Investigators say this man here, 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, was taken into custody after police got a tip.
He was arrested at this McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Investigators say an employee recognized him and called police. Thank you for joining us on WUSA 9 and streaming on WUSA 9 Plus on this Monday. I'm Leslie Foster.
And I'm Lorenzo Hall. So we're told Mangione has ties to our area. He was born and raised north of Baltimore. Tom Hansen has the latest on the investigation from New York.
Authorities in Pennsylvania are questioning a person of interest in connection to the shooting death of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
He matches the description of the identification we've been looking for.
The man, identified as 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, was arrested at an Altoona McDonald's Monday morning on firearms charges after an employee called in a tip. Officials say Mangione was carrying a ghost gun and a silencer.
Also recovered was a fraudulent New Jersey ID, matching the ID our suspect used to check into his New York City hostel before the shooting incident.
Officials have combed through thousands of hours of video since the targeted attack in front of a Midtown hotel last week, deploying drones, K9 units, and scuba divers in Central Park. Dive teams scoured a pond in the park looking for more evidence after finding a backpack they believe belonged to the shooter in the area, containing a jacket and Monopoly money. Police believe the shooter headed to the Port Authority's bus station near the George Washington Bridge after ditching the bike he used to flee the scene of the crime.
This investigation is still active and ongoing.
Police say they've recovered a handwritten 3-page document from the person in custody indicating he had some ill will towards corporate America. They're also scrubbing his social media accounts as the investigation continues. Tom Hansen, CBS News, New York.
And you can expect more from WUSA.
Thanks, WUSA. It's News Debate. I'm late. By the way, scrubbing someone's social media accounts makes it sound like you're erasing them, not investigating them. They're combing through. They're what's the technical term for IT? Crawlers. There's some sort of thing Google does where it crawls like through a page and grabs all the information. Whatever it is, it's not scrubbing. That was the wrong term. So some things that stood out here. Once again, leave voice messages over on stereo. Bjorn, throw in if you have something. Frankie, raise your hand. Apostate Nate, join us as a speaker. Glenn, if you have something to say, you can throw in on this one, or we can wait for your hot take. Just raise your hand as you know. Things that were really interesting to me. Of course, his fake ID was from New Jersey. Of course. Is fake ID from Florida, from California? No, it's from New Jersey, of course. And the thing here that is just so fitting is the police did not catch him. Someone saw him in a McDonald's. I believe he had gotten off a bus and was in McDonald's, and they recognized his good looks from when he lowered his mask at the hostel, which apparently that's what, that was the big mistake he made. And they called it in, and then someone showed up and arrested him. But he had enough good sense, if you will, that he had like like the Unabomber when he has his book in the cabin. He had his manifesto. He had his 3-page handwritten note with him. So if he got arrested, like, hey, here it is, guys. They mentioned he had a ghost gun. That does not necessarily mean a 3D printed gun. I would be really surprised if this was 3D printed, because even though it didn't work very well, usually 3D printed guns look like 3D printed guns. And this, even though the video footage is not great, it appeared to be like a gun. So ghost gun, I believe, usually just means there's no serial numbers. And usually like you assemble the gun out of parts, but that is very different than 3D printing a gun. So I'd be surprised if it was 3D printed, but if it was, yet another indication that 3D printed guns can look like real guns, but the way his gun sucked, maybe that is an indication it was a 3D printed gun because it didn't work very well. Yeah, those are my thoughts. I wonder what everybody else thinks. Let me know what you think. And yeah, Glenn, your hand is up. Great to have you. What do you think about this?
So, like, I really actually didn't know anything about it till today. I heard like bits and pieces of it, but I just looked it up. And so I seen a screenshot of someone like making a joke about like he's not going to get ad revenue because he didn't pay for premium. And at that point, he had 5,000 followers. And it just dawned on me that there's like 160,000 sick people that all followed him on Twitter once they found out who it was.
So he had a Twitter handle, and
He has Twitter.
Yeah, because he's an IT guy. So he had a Twitter account, and when people figured out who he was, he's just gotten a bazillion followers.
Like 160,000 today.
I'm surprised it's that low, to be honest.
Well, it's within the first 24 hours. He'll probably be at 1 million tomorrow.
Let me see if I can find him.
Really easy.
Because they would have to get a request specifically to X to like delete his account, block his account, and
as of right
X
now,
would
he has
have to
no
agree.
He has no tweets. He has a pinned tweet. He has no. I looked at his thing. He has a pinned tweet from 2022, and that's all that there is there. So when they scrubbed it, they basically just made everything go away if he had any tweets, but maybe he just wasn't active.
So maybe when I heard scrub from the police, I thought that meant comb through, because scrub would mean like erase. I don't think they've erased his tweets because that would mean they were working with X, and to do that, they would have to have a court order because X would not cooperate with them.
No, not just willy-nilly. So I just
Yeah,
don't
so
think
I
he
don't
really
think I don't think they've erased anything from his. So he has a lot of reposts.
It showed me nothing. So maybe his account's blocked in Canada, which, would be
They're
very
not showing
socialist
you
of us.
anything.
They just showed me his pin tweet.
Well, so his pin tweets. I'm going to share this in a second. I just wanted to make sure it looks legit. I have no idea, but what makes it look legit the most is that the pinned tweet is from December 8th of 2022. I'm
Yeah.
going to share this over on twitch.tv/NEWZ debate and rumble.com/user/NEWZ debate. So his pinned tweet is from 2022.
I lied.
Sorry?
I lied. It's I see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It
So-
must have not loaded for me.
Yeah, and then down here, I'm seeing a bunch of reposts. I'm not seeing any actual posts from him. But to be honest, a lot of people don't really use Twitter. Some people use it way too much. Oh, here's one. Okay, he posted on April 18th about modern Japanese urban environments. Yeah, he was like an app developer, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is particularly empty. It's just not super active.
Yeah. But yeah, like this morning he had 5,000 followers.
Well, it just changed. He had 173,000 and it just went up to 174. I saw that in real time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So he's definitely getting followers like a crazy person, which he can't even use.
So there's a picture of him without a shirt next to either a volcano or a coastline, and then it looks like an X-ray that shows he has screws, maybe like in his leg, so maybe he had an accident or something. This appears legit, but I don't know. It says he's in Honolulu, Hawaii. I don't know. It looks like it could be him, but it's hard to tell at this point. Wow, that's
So
fascinating. Thanks for letting us know.
Luigi. So it'd be Hawaiian Luigi, not Italian Luigi. Because I don't think
Hawaiian
there's too many
Luigi.
Italians in
Because
Hawaii.
if you search for Luigi Mangione or whatever his name is, the only one that pops up that looks like him is the first one, and that was the one I just showed you. Bjorn says those screws are in his spine. So that's fascinating. Bjorn, can you jump in here? And if you can jump in, let us know. Did you hear that he had some sort of I couldn't tell from the photo. Maybe you're just looking at the photo and being like, Lee, that's a spine, not a leg. But did you hear about this?
Yeah, it looks like no. I'm just looking at the picture. Looks like he had a little bit of what we call a spondylolisthesis, or kind of where you can see like part of the spine is slipping forward from the top a little bit down. And they probably just had screws to keep it from slipping forward any further. So like sometimes like the spine will like slip off of each other, and so like you can use the screws to basically hold it in place. It's like a fusion, what that would be called, a spinal fusion. They fuse the different bones together.
I had that surgery, but they did the fusion.
Yeah, I was going to ask Frankie J. So I just looked at this photo, and you appear to be absolutely correct. That does look like someone's spine. And I was actually thinking Frankie J said he had a fused spine. So how does that work for you, Frankie J?
Well, I had the spinal fusion surgery 2 years ago. They put 4 cages and I think about 12 or 14 screws. I can't remember exactly. And since that time, I've had a couple other discs that are starting to slip. And what they're suggesting is to put in just screws but not do any more fusion. But I'm not going to do it. But yeah, Bjorn's right. Sometimes if it's, I don't want to say mild, but I mean anything with the spine is, slippery slope. But if they can prevent doing a fusion, I think that popping a couple screws into things in place makes more sense. But in my case, it was so messed up that the fusion was really the only option, and I would take it back in a second if I could.
Frankie, were you in New York anytime recently? You stay in a hostel? Are you
No,
the
not
CEO
yet.
there? Yeah.
Um,
By the way, Glenn
no,
has posted a moment ago. He said if Frankie J buys a sweatsuit and a gold chain, he could collect protection money and weed. Frankie just stone killer. Yeah, exactly. You could become the mafia of that retirement home, Frankie.
but forget about it.
Glenn says, "How do I put my hand down?" Glenn, when you go into your options to put your hand up, I believe there should be the same option to put it down. It may look the same or it may look different, but it should just be you hit it a second time and it goes down. Maybe not.
You just gotta open up the hands and just tap the hand that you've hit. It'll go down.
Fantastic. Well, now that your hand is up, let's just keep talking to Glenn. Glenn, so you're in Canada. Is
Yeah.
this a big story there? Because this is a huge story here.
Well, I live kind of a little bit under a rock, so like in my circle of people I interact with, no, not at the moment, but I imagine it eventually will become that because now it's blowing up because they caught him. So no, it hasn't been,
But
but
I
I
mean, do you
imagine it
watch
will.
like Canadian TV or check Canadian websites? Is this being reported?
Well, I mean, I've seen it, but I don't click on the article, so I guess it is being reported, but I'm the wrong person to ask because I didn't have any curiosity in it.
So Bjorn has just sent me a link that's going to talk about, I believe, this sort of spinal thing, spondylolisthesis, spondy. Yeah, spondy. We're going to call it spondy. Thanks, Bjorn. Let me pull this up here. I'm going to share it on twitch.tv/NEWZ debate and rumble.com/user/NEWZ debate. What is spondylolisthesis? It occurs when one vertebra slips and moves forward in relation to the vertebra beneath it. Usually occurs in the lumbar and sacral regions. The slippage is forward, usually results in a gradual deformity of the lower spine and a narrowing of the vertebral canal. When the vertebra slips backwards instead of forward, this is called retrolisthesis. Pain in the back and legs are common. So you're telling me this guy has a spine condition
This is
and
interesting.
he killed the CEO and rode off. Sorry, Bjorn, take it away.
Oh, I was just gonna say this is interesting because dude has already had his own medical experiences as well, and people who have like chronic low back pain often are quite dissatisfied with our ways that we can fix it, as we don't have really great ways to fix it. Even surgery oftentimes doesn't fix pain. Sometimes it can make it worse. And so I wonder if there's also a component not only of his relatives, but also his own experiences with the healthcare and like his surgery. Who knows?
Yeah. Thanks for that, Bjorn. My question with when we were talking originally about this, it was like, well, clearly he targeted the CEO of a very large healthcare company that makes its money by denying people healthcare. So he had to have a reason. But I just kept thinking, this guy's really young. So is it like his mom died, his dad died, his brother, his sister died, his love of his life died, and felt like they were not treated well? I never thought there'd be anything specifically with him. This brings up a clear, whoa, look at this. But I would argue, I mean, since he was walking around and doing stuff and riding a bike and assassinating the CEO of UnitedHealth, He doesn't seem to be in too much pain. So clearly, how he got here is something we don't know about. But my guess is it would be just in general, he doesn't like corporate America, as we heard in the news report, or he has some family member who has suffered because I don't know. I've seen a lot of people with pain, and he didn't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he copes. He's young. He hides it. But that's just, if I had to guess, it is interesting. You're not wrong. This could be a connection that makes sense. But I would be really surprised if this was it. I feel like there has to be either he's just opposed to healthcare companies as a form of healthcare, like he's just gotten into, like it should be all national healthcare, like I say, or these corporations are evil, and even if we like corporations, these ones are the worst. Or he has some horrible experience with a family member or someone like that. I feel like this isn't it, but you're right. This does start to paint a picture that maybe someone who goes and kills the CEO of United Healthcare has to have not only maybe some sort of anti-corporation sentiment, some sort of pro-socialism sentiment, and some sort of person he was close with who had a problem, and his own experience that informs him that I know as a fact myself that this is a bad situation. By the way, if it turns out he's just a socialist sympathizer, that's really going to help the Republicans. Trump could get a third term if it turns out he did it in the name of socialism. Holy cow. I'm getting a bunch of messages over on 323-250-0867. Really appreciate all of them. Not necessarily going to read them all, but really
Hey,
think
Lou,
this
I don't mean to cut in.
text message thing's working out. Yes, Frankie.
Can I make a suggestion? It might be a little easier. Put your phone number up in the title of the space.
Yeah, it's not going to work this time. But once again, everyone who's in the space right now already knows it. So I don't know how much that's going to be helpful. It's not going to be unhelpful. You're right. But I don't know how much good it's going to do when mostly people who are on the show are people who know the show. And I mentioned it several times. But yeah, that's an idea. Yeah, it's a good one. Thanks, Frankie. I'll try that the next time. And Glenn's hand is still up, so I think that means he hasn't been able to put it down.
No, he put it down. You put it back up.
Oh, okay. Hey, Glenn, your hand is up.
I tried it. It didn't go back down for me. It down for you.
I didn't see it go down, but Frankie says he thought it went down.
It won't go down. It's just eternally up there.
That's what she said. That's what she said.
She wishes that's what she said.
Sounds like a personal problem, Glenn. You with your goddamn national health care and get all the Viagra you need. All right, it's News Debate, Emily. So let me read from the New York Post here, and then we can move on. Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old tech whiz suspected of gunning down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last week. This is the thing, is we have to say alleged, suspected. Clearly, this is him. Apparently used a ghost gun that might have been made on a 3D printer. Once again, a ghost gun, I believe, just means it's not registered and it doesn't have serial numbers because it's like parts.
It can get through metal detectors as well.
No, that's not true. No. A ghost gun does not mean it gets through metal detectors, Frankie. Look that one up. Sorry, Bjorn, continue.
Oh, I was just saying that the receiver is like the part that is like considered the gun. And so you could conceivably 3D print that portion, and then the rest of it could be metal, like metal, all of the other things. So, who knows? Because the other things are not considered the gun, like the barrel and everything like that. So you could just print that portion, I guess, and do it. They do have like fully 3D printed guns, but they like are really terrible, like very inconsistently. But it also, again, goes back to the question of why was his gun jamming over and over again. So maybe this is part of the reason.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. Thank you for providing that context. Um, so when I thought 3D printed gun, I made the mistake that you just pointed out. I thought they meant the whole thing was printed, but you're right. In the United States, the part of the gun that's considered the gun is a specific component. Now, like on an AR-15 style gun, that's the receiver that you can pull out and completely separate from the rest of the gun. In many different types of guns, you can't do that. So, for instance, a pistol doesn't come apart usually in that way. You can take it apart, but it's all kind of like one piece. But whatever the case, as Bjorn said, that's absolutely true. You could have a parts kit that you can just buy, and you don't have to have a background check. It's just parts. And the receiver or the main component of the gun, because once again, a handgun is not like an AR-15 or an AK-47. It's kind of all together. At least your typical like a Glock or a is it a 1911 Colts, the 45 that we used in World War II, whatever it is. Handguns usually are a little bit more all together, but you could get parts kits that give you the specific parts of the gun that you would need to assemble the entire thing. And then the chunk of the gun that would be registered, the chunk of the gun that you need to have a background check to get, whatever that is for whatever type of gun you're looking for, that maybe could have been 3D printed. So it's not a 3D printed gun, but it's a ghost gun that's made of parts from a kit, assembled, and the part that you would really need to have a background check for or just be really hard to get, that's the one that maybe was 3D printed. Yes. But like what Frankie J was saying, even a 3D printed gun most of the time will have some sort of metal in it. So it's not about getting through a metal detector. That's like a ceramic gun. I don't know how those work. I've seen those like in movies. How to get through a metal detector? Oh, it was a ceramic gun. Apparently those are like really expensive and hard to get, but just because it's 3D printed doesn't mean it doesn't have metal parts. Especially even the bullets. If you got through a metal detector with a gun but had no bullets, what does that do for you? Bullets are made of metal. So getting through a metal detector is a little bit different. But whatever the case, from the New York Post, they're saying it could be a 3D printed gun, or maybe a component of it is a 3D printed component. So the cops nabbed him while he was at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania. Apparently, I heard at some points because he'd taken a bus there or whatever. I don't know. Maybe he was that was his congratulatory dinner. Sources say he is an anti-capitalist Ivy League grad. I saw somewhere that he was the valedictorian of his high school, but I can't confirm that. Originally from Maryland, Mangione may have hated the medical community because of how it treated a sick relative. There's a lot of pictures of him now. Yeah, former school valedictorian. He was caught with a silencer. So you see that in the video of him shooting the CEO. It says a U.S. passport, but it doesn't say a fake passport. I think that was probably his passport if he had to like jump on a plane or go to Canada or something. Yeah, you could have hung out with him, Glenn. 4 fake IDs. So that makes me think the U.S. passport was actually his. And he also had a 2.5-page manifesto. In the writing, he seethed that these parasites had it coming, according to law enforcement. So some of these New York Post comments are kind of interesting. The one says, looks like another successful student produced by our institutions of higher learning. Yeah, that's if the Republicans needed more of a reason to attack higher education institutions, here's one. And then someone replies, if only our institutions of higher learning didn't also produce the evil CEOs who profit off our illness. Someone also writes, it's not what this guy did. We have seen assassinations and attempts at them before. It's that people are united. United all in caps. So that was on purpose. That corporate greed is the problem. That CEO was probably responsible for more death and suffering than this young man has ever committed. Not an excuse, but left and right seem united. One person says, bet he was one of the, it says Intifada. I think it's Antifada protesters, whatever it is, the people who are all black, are really far left and violent. Yeah, those are fun comments. All right, it's News Debate. I am Lee. So who wants to talk about this? This is a fascinating topic. We can move on, but I really think there's more talking to be had. Anybody have some hot takes on this?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify that the Intifada is the Arab uprisings in Israel, where Antifa is like the far left wing protesters, like had all those protests in Portland and other places. So I'm not sure what exactly they wrote there.
Okay, thank you. So clearly I'm an idiot. So Antifa is the black clothes far left. Intifada is the, as you just mentioned, Gaza stuff.
Yeah, there was the Intifadas are like the big uprisings. There's like 3 of them. I'm not sure exactly, but like the big uprisings that kicked off maybe a little different event.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Yeah, I
find,
mean, I'm just
trying to
in
find
terms of
definitions on this. What
figuring
confused
out.
me is that I've seen
Go ahead.
Antifa, I've seen Antifada, and then this one said Intifada, like IN, and I hadn't seen that one yet, but maybe I'm a dummy. So, all right, confusing nonetheless.
Yeah, I think also the commenters may be confused as well. Yeah, I mean, I think the it was weird in one of my books that I was reading that had nothing to do with this. They said that when the populace rises up against the upper class, if you will, the reasons that they use for violence are always against like the bankers and the people who have like wealth disparity over them. And it was just interesting. Exactly, I'm misquoting it terribly, but it was interesting how it was like separate. I mean, you could go back to like the French Revolution when the wealth gap that they had back then, it was much less than the wealth gap we have in the United States between the poorest and the richest in this country by far. That caused a violent revolution happen in France. Heads rolled, and there was no more bourgeoisie after that. And so, like, not saying that these things will happen more, but almost feel like with the attempted assassination of Trump, this tweeted assassination, I just wonder if like this is kind of, we're entering a new era of like young dudes deciding that they're going to like take out singular targets, whereas before, the hot and sexy thing was to like shoot up a school. Now it's to like assassinate somebody that you don't like. So I don't know if this is going to be a trend or not, but it's kind of a little disturbing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I saw that Napoleon movie a while ago, was really disappointed with it, but it makes sense what you've been saying. I have ChatGPT here, and it's helping me because I'm an idiot. So what's the difference between Antifa, Antifada, and Intifada? Antifa is short for anti-fascist. It traces its roots to movements in Europe during the early 20th century, particularly in opposition to Mussolini and Nazi Germany. It refers to loosely organized groups or individuals opposing far-right ideologies, fascism, and authoritarianism. generally associated with leftist, anarchist, and socialist ideas, but it's not a unified organization. Yeah, it's just what people look like and how they, in my opinion, cause a lot of violence. But okay. And then Antifada is a fusion of Antifa and Intifada, coined by leftist activists or commenters, primarily used as a term for radical left-wing or revolutionary activism. It's referencing a militant or revolutionary uprising inspired by anti-fascist and anti-imperialist ideals. Okay, and then Intifada is an Arabic word shaking off or uprising. Refers to two major Palestinian uprisings against Israeli occupation. The first one from 87 to 93, and then the second one from 2000 to 2005. Outside of these conflicts, Intifada might be used metaphorically to signify uprisings or struggles for liberation. All right. Good times. There are three, and they're kind of connected, and one is actually connecting them literally with the term. Good times. It's News Debate. I'm Lee. Hey, we got MC Funk over here. Great to have you, MC Funk. We also have Apostate Nate has joined us as a speaker. Apostate Nate, do you want to jump in and say, oh, and Glenn has lowered his hand. Well, no, on one screen it's up and on one it's down. So half victory, Glenn. Apostate Nate, are you with us? Do you want to say hello?
Hi, here. Yeah, I'm here, Lee. I've been thinking, I guess not a whole lot about the fact that, they've apprehended somebody. Maybe this is the suspect and what people think about it. I mean, I think if you shoot somebody in the back.
State?
No. The sinkhole thing happened in my state, not the shooting.
Altoona, Pennsylvania. No, they captured him in your state.
Yeah, yes, he was captured in Altoona. I might have been to that McDonald's in Altoona. I've been to a McDonald's in Altoona before. And you should know that I went to college in the same county where that grandmother fell into the sinkhole. So that's everything's happening around me, Lee.
Man, Apostate Nate is bringing all the news together. Look at this.
But I think it's really simple as far as them apprehending a guy. It's not okay to shoot somebody in the back, even if they're a dirtbag. And I think that we need to have a legal system that doesn't devolve into something we might see in less developed nations, with less tightly written constitutions and laws and so forth. Not a fan of murder. Not a fan of murder. I can't say that I have enough pity in my soul for a healthcare executive, but murder bad, prosecution of murder good. That's my view here, I guess.
And this is going to be what I said earlier. This is going to be the real media blitz, the real media frenzy. I made a joke earlier in the show that the e-bike ride is over. He used an e-bike to escape. But actually, the e-bike ride may have just begun because now he's in police custody. They're going to have to respect his rights to a certain extent. And he's going to have a trial. How long is it going to be until the trial even begins? What's the trial going to be like? I'm really excited for people dressing up like Mario and Luigi outside of the trial. I mean, this could just go and go and go, unless he's Jeffrey Epstein in jail, in which case, well, then it could just kind of ends. MC Funk, great to have you. Request to speak. If you can throw in with your voice, that would be awesome. Oh yeah, here it is. Hey, MC Funk, speak of the devil. We're going to throw MC Funk up as a speaker and hear his thoughts. Great to have you again, man.
Yeah, hey. So an interesting anecdote regarding this whole situation. I think you may remember the other day when we first talked about this, I had mentioned some of my own issues dealing with United and prescription drug costs because they wouldn't cover my son's medication. And so I've been paying out of pocket for it for like the past 2 years. And, we've submitted multiple times and to have it covered, and it just keeps getting denied. I saw a couple of kind of anecdotes kind of floating around that people who worked in pharmacies were like, everything's just getting approved right now. Like kind of like they don't want to piss anybody off. And so I was like, well, it's time to get a refill form anyways. So I went ahead and just asked them to go ahead and submit it again for like the 5th time. It was approved in like 20 minutes.
No.
Yeah.
How long have you been paying for this medicine?
I've been paying out of pocket for it for 2 years. And they've denied it like 6 times.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
Head explode.
So they approved it today though.
Wow. So does that mean they can't unapprove it? So like your kid's gonna be able to have that forever?
Usually the pre-authorizations are usually good for a year.
Wow. That's a significant savings. You said it was like $400, but then at some point it fell to like 120 or 150.
It was $450. I was paying for about a year and a half, and then about 6 months ago it dropped to $150.
That was a month.
Yep. And
Yeah.
now it'll be like $20.
Holy cow. That is insane. Well, thank you for bringing that up. If anybody needs some medicine,
If anybody needs a prior authorization for anything, now's the time.
that's hilarious. I asked this question the first time we discussed this on the show. It may have been the day it happened. I can't recall, but around the time it happened, certainly before they captured him. And I asked the question. We didn't really get to an answer, but I asked, is it possible to say that already this shooting has had positive repercussions? I think the answer is yes. Clearly not for the man who was murdered and his family and the rule of law. But, you heard this thing was happening, so you went and tried it again and it was approved. Like, how many other people are like you? That's a real result right there.
Yeah. So that was because when I called the pediatrician, because I had to have him call in a new prescription anyways, and I just asked him, I was like, while you're at it, can you guys go ahead and just submit the pre-auth again? And he was like, well, they've denied it every time, and I was like, I know, and I told her what I've seen some of these anecdotes floating around, and like, it's not going to hurt if they deny it. I'll keep paying out of pocket. It's fine, but might as well give it a shot. And usually these things take like several days or like a week or two. And like, it was approved in like 20 minutes. So it was like an automatic approval kind
the
of
pharmacist is like, Mr. Funk, I actually didn't hit return on this submission, but somehow it's been approved already.
All right.
It's just gone through. Well, Bjorn has jumped in and he wants to be a bit of a naysayer. He says probably it was characterized as a lower tier when it lowered in price. It's likely unrelated.
The price change maybe, but I don't know about the approval. Like literally nothing has changed in these circumstances.
So I guess the question would be, you said like 6 months ago it dropped from 450 to 150, but you haven't submitted a new approval since that price change, right?
No, I did last month.
Oh, okay. Take that, Bjorn.
It's denied again.
Put that in your pipe.
Yeah, because in order to approve the name brand, then they required that we tried like 5 different other ones first, and we tried 4 of them, and and they're like, nope, you got to try more. And I was like, no, because we found one that works, doesn't have side effects, and it's really, really hard on them every time we switch to something different. So we're not gonna do that. And but it was denied a month ago, and it was approved today.
Wow. That is great news, man. I'm happy for you. I have a quick question. So you and your ex-wife still have seems like a strong relationship. You have the thing where it's like not you explained at one time, it's like every so often with you, every so often with her, and it switches. And if you need to switch a weekend, you guys have a relationship.
Yeah, we he switches every other week. Like he's with me every other week, with her every other week, and so.
Oh, okay. So I thought it was more
But
complicated.
we only
than that.
live
That's
like
not complicated
we
at
only
all.
live like a mile and a half from each other, so.
You live really close. You guys are still in contact. I'm just wondering, is
Yeah.
there a specific reason that you're paying for this medication?
Yeah, that was part of the arrangement. You know, the when we split that, I'm basically, because we didn't have any, like, there's no child support, no, or anything, and at the time we split, our incomes were, pretty similar, and so that kind of was going to fall out in the wash anyways. But I, not too long ago had a pretty significant increase in income, and rather than deal with any kind of formulas or figuring that out, we just kind of agreed that anything extra that comes up for him, I cover.
So I get the easier than child support. That makes perfect sense. My friends that have had to go through child support, it's just not good. So congratulations on moving past that. But would you be on the hook for child support if it's like half and half custody?
Yes.
Because you're a man?
No, it's basically the whole point of child support is to kind of, especially the formulas are different for a joint custody versus a sole custody situation, but for a joint custody situation, then it's the underlying premise is to try to ensure that the child has a similar living standard at both places that he lives. So, they basically kind of, there's some cap and there's a formula for it, and it's essentially kind of evening some of that out with some percentages, and but kind of initially it was going to work out to like $130 a month or something, and and we were both like, that's not worth either of our time to deal with that, to deal with the hassle for kind of that amount, and so we just kind of agreed that I would, basically I'll just, I cover like any kind of significant expense for him that comes up, and extra stuff for him that comes up, I cover.
I can just imagine, like, when he starts playing Pee Wee football or something, you're like in the stands, you're like, yeah, that's right, Billy, great job. Slow down, slow down, slow down. Don't go too fast, Billy. And then, so these are the expenses that come up, but like that doesn't include like college, right?
No, like I think we're both kind of planning on contributing to that how we can. So,
Man, adults who get divorced and remain adults, everybody. It can happen. Case in point. That's fantastic. So are you
but
gonna,
yeah,
are you gonna
kind
tell
of
your son
the
about
anecdote.
this?
Do what? No, it's not really. It's not really something that kind of makes sense to enter his, kind of sphere of concern right now.
But did he know you were paying for it? Was that a conversation
Yes.
you had with him? Okay.
Yeah, he knew. Yeah. But because like sometimes he's with me when I pick it up at the pharmacy, and the pharmacist is like, do you know how much this
throw down
is?
that cold hard cash. Yeah.
Well, the pharmacist like raises it. They're like, do you know how much this is? And I'm like, yes, I'm aware. Trust me, I've been through this. It is what it is. They're like, okay.
Like customer of the month, MC Funk's got his picture up there. Yeah.
Yeah,
4
but
years
it was
running.
approved today, so insurance will be covering it for at least the next year.
Man, that's insane. That is insane.
Yeah.
Once again, we're not condoning murder, but positive repercussions of a murder.
Yes, I would like to reiterate, murder is bad. I do not approve of murder.
Man,
And
that is insane.
we also like we don't know what the motivations were. Like, you know, that we're starting to get a clearer picture of that. But yeah, so but yeah, that was just on topic. It was a curious anecdote related.
So stay with us, MC Funk, and thank you so much for sharing that. That is really, really fascinating. And Frankie J, you have your hand up. What do you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask MC Funk. First of all, I commend you and your ex for being able to, from what I assume and what I've gathered from what you've shared, it seems like you two had a peaceful split that didn't necessarily involve a courtroom. You more or less divorced and as
Right.
adults mediated with each other to agree on terms to keep it out of the court. So is that what
Yeah.
I'm understanding?
Yep.
Wonderful. It didn't go that way for me, but normally,
Yeah.
child support is 17% of the income of the man or whatever. But I'm glad you guys were able to keep it out of the courtroom because you don't want the court in your family. That's wonderful. Great news. I'm just jealous because I actually found out the other day. I thought I would have to pay child support until my son turned 18, but it's actually 21
Wait,
now.
time out, Frankie. Time out. I didn't know you had a son.
I have a son. He's
You got
17.
a little Frank running around?
Yeah, he's around. He's a little stud muffin. Yeah, he's 17. He'll be 18 next October. Or
And
yeah,
so is
next
this
next
with
October.
your not wife who disappeared, but your previous wife?
First wife. My first wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're paying
Yeah.
child support, and that goes until, did you say he's 21 rather than 18?
Yeah, I thought it was 18, and then I've been reading that it's 21 now. I'm wondering when that changed because yeah, I thought it was 18. Next year was supposed to be the last year I have to pay child support. He's well off. I mean, I'm not, wanting to deny my son money, but he's well off. They got millions in the bank. But
I have a question though. I think you had mentioned previously that you were on disability. So how does child support work if you're on disability?
same way. If my first wife wanted to put me through the ringer, she could bring me back to child support court, and they would take 17% of my monthly SSDI because it's considered my income right now. But she hasn't. I think she makes like $61 or $62 an hour as an ER nurse. She's well off. The whole family's well off. So I think they finally decided I wasn't worth picking on anymore.
Wow, that's
And
another really interesting nugget. ER nurses make $60 an hour.
where she works, yeah, she works at the biggest hospital in Buffalo, New York. I mean, she's actually really good at it. She's always had that like medical thing in her, and I always knew that she would do good things in the medical field. But she works a lot of overtime, so I think that's where a lot of that income comes from.
Oh, okay,
So
sure.
that,
But weren't you
yeah,
weren't you a first responder at some point? So couldn't you have
I
like
was.
delivered someone to the hospital and run into your ex-wife?
No, because we did not transport. Our fire department, we were EMTs, but we did not transport. We had a third party ambulance company that would show up
Oh,
to
okay, so if you
the
show
scenes.
up as a
Yeah,
firefighter and you need to perform some sort of life-saving procedure, you do
right.
that, but then the ambulance brings them to the hospital.
Correct. I mean, there was a handful of times where I would ride the rig or the ambulance to a hospital doing CPR en route to a hospital, but it was never the hospital she worked at. So, but to answer your question, no, I wouldn't have had it. We wouldn't have had any like bad
Yeah,
blood,
that's
but we
funny.
wouldn't have talked
You
to
like
each other.
ride in the ambulance because the person's like, "Just hold my hand, Mr. J," and you're like, "I'll be here, Billy." And then you look around and you're like, "Wait, which hospital are we going to?" And then all of a sudden you
Yeah,
like
I
jump out the
out the
window.
back. I kept, sorry, man, you're on your own.
Best of luck,
But
Billy.
no, yeah, I thought it was 18, and then I find out it's 21, and I'm like, son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch. Yeah. Yeah, because under Obamacare, didn't they extend I think you can stay under your parents' health insurance until you're 24 or 26 or something. That was an extension that they did. That was a big change, along with you can't discriminate against someone because of pre-existing health conditions. I'm sure there are other ones, but those are the ones I seem to remember. And then they had like funding for people who couldn't afford healthcare. So rather than just have national healthcare, the government would actually give poor people money to purchase healthcare and give it to the big companies like UnitedHealthcare, whose CEO was just murdered. I don't know what I was about to say there, but I that is wow. Whew. What does United Healthcare do when they charge him? Like, so they just probably keep releasing statements, but then when are they going to appoint? Like, can you imagine being the next CEO of United Healthcare? Like, hey, John, you've worked here a long time. Yes, sir. Really enjoy United Healthcare. Really believe in the message of ripping off Americans. We would like you to be the new CEO. Really?
Sadly enough, someone will take that position.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty happy where I am. No, John, you've earned it. Come on, here's your jacket. You're the new CEO. I just don't know if it's right for me.
Lee, I need money. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Can't be that hard to be a decent person.
I don't know, man. I feel like it'd be kind of be like trying to be a decent person if you're the head of like the mafia or something. Like, I feel like the job sort of makes it necessary to compromise your ethics and morals. I don't think you'd last long as the CEO of United Healthcare if you wanted to actually help people, to be honest. Personal beliefs. I had nothing against him. Oh, Bjorn, you have fallen down as a co-host over on Stereo. I'm going to lower the volume and I'll call you back.
Russell Wilson.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Frankie J was texting me. He wants to congratulate Apostate Nate on Russell Wilson's fabulous performance and another Steelers victory.
I tell you what, Wilson's been money. He's been money. I mean, a lot of people are of the mindset they should go with the younger hand, and there's logic to that, but there's also the fact that in sports, the most important moment is always now.
Yeah, I mean, they really can have the best of both worlds because, if Wilson gets injured, like he was injured at the beginning of the season before the first game even took place, okay, well, look at that. Mr. Chicago's back in the saddle. And if they want to mix it up during the game and confuse the defense and I don't know, have him do some runs or something. I think I saw it, maybe not this last game, but a game 2 weeks ago, they threw him in a little bit. I mean, they have him. He's not going anywhere. I don't think he's unsatisfied with his performance with the Steelers thus far. He did pretty well before Russell Wilson took over. And, with how well they're doing now and how the Bills just lost, and once again, the Chiefs are an underwhelming, very, very good team. Man, I know you don't feel so great about their chances, Apostate Nate, but yeah, all it takes is one hit.
I feel about as good at them as I felt, I would say, in a while, but down here in southwestern Pennsylvania, there are quite a few human beings who are getting a little bit bored of snuffing out of the playoffs almost immediately for a very long time now. Mike Tomlin doesn't have a losing season, but his number of playoff wins since 2017 is staggeringly low. It's like 2 or 3 games or something like playoff wins since then, and I just don't think that makes a much longer stretch of technically winning seasons worth the trouble.
Well, would you rather be in the situation of the Dallas Cowboys?
No, their owner and manager is insane. I would not want to be in their situation.
But if you just look at their coach, I mean, their coach was a winning coach. He was a coach who had won with another team, and he went to Dallas and lackluster. I mean, like Tomlin is performing better than Dallas has under, was it McCarthy? Is that his name? The guy in Dallas? I mean, I think comparatively they've done better. Would you rather have Pete Carroll,
I think
who's run out
I
of
think
Seattle?
I think people who are used to just god awful losing seasons, if like you're a perpetual fan of say the Cleveland Browns, I think that's a perfect home for Mike Tomlin. But I would like to see him packing, and so would many other Steelers fans.
I get it, because before the success of this season, like other people were saying that too. Just like they were saying that about the Bills head coach until they did decently well until this last game. But I'm trying to think, like, if you think about longevity and if you think about coaches who've gone through multiple quarterbacks, even what's his name with the Chiefs, Andy Reid, he was let go. Oh, yeah, I mean, like, how dumb does it look for the Eagles? They let go Andy Reid because he wasn't winning Super Bowls. He was getting them into, I mean, Andy Reid. Okay, Andy Reid. I don't even have to go any further. He's the perfect example. He was a good coach for the Eagles, but he was not the best coach that they could hope for. He wasn't able to seal the deal. He leaves, he goes to the Chiefs, where he has the quarterback, he has the organization, he has the stability, all the other benefits of being in Kansas City, and it's amazing. Don't you think the Eagles would have did that move knowing what they know now? I mean, I feel like Tomlin,
I mean, hindsight's always 20,
so
20, but coaches aren't always the best fit, and they're not always the best peg for the hole they got to work in either. And sometimes the change in a coaching climate can take a coach who just keeps hitting a wall and certainly help them out. I mean, there's no question. Sure, in Philadelphia, they're looking at the recent record of the Chiefs and saying, man, maybe we shouldn't have. The Steelers are overly patient historically with their coaches. They don't fire them. Look it up. Not a very long list of Steelers coaches dating back to the 1970s. And they have sort of married themselves to the ideology that you never fire the head coach. But I mean, here's my question for all the football fans out there. If a coach like Mike Tomlin has consistently proven that when it's really his whole locker room, his team, the old guard is gone, he does not get the job done in the playoffs, and he didn't get it done even with, I think it's safe to say a Hall of Fame quarterback working for him. He was notoriously terrible at controlling the locker room. So when teammates, like Antonio Brown wanted to raise all that ruckus, Tomlin's just kind of one of the boys in those situations. Some of those players need like a Bill Belichick.
All the things that you're saying, though, what happens if they go really deep this year? They're kind of erased.
Lee, it's football. Absolutely anything is possible. Okay. I can tell you they're not going to make a push. I mean, look, they're sitting at 10-3. Russell Wilson has breathed new life into them. All the metrics point to the defense being leaky, but enough. It could be. I'm just looking at a very, very long string of playoff runs that quite honestly weren't even close to being competitive. And that's become the norm. At a certain point as a sports fan, I do privilege your success in the playoffs more than I privilege your success in the regular season. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, sure, of course, and that's fair. But also, if you look at the Steelers, like they're not Tampa Bay. When what's his name, horrible person, Tom Brady went to the Buccaneers, some people are like, oh, he's going to go to Vegas, he's going to go here, he's going to go there. But remember his last season? It was like his first losing season, or his first losing season in however many years, and they still went to the playoffs. That's what you get when you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Steelers don't have that situation. They have a lot of competition up there, which was why people were confused why Russell Wilson would go to the Steelers. Clearly it's worked out, but they thought that there were better strategic places for him to go.
My knowledge of the NFL isn't wide enough, I don't think, Lee, in terms of other teams to say where anybody should go. But I got a feeling Frankie J can say more than me on that one.
Yeah, we're gonna throw things to Frankie J. Frankie's football picks every week. 0-2 for the first one, but I gotta say, I was 1-1. I didn't think for a second the Chargers would lose to the Chiefs, so I called you out on that one very quickly. Although that was a close game, but I thought the Bills would beat the Rams, and it would not be a close game. That was also a very close, big shootout. So I was 1-1. You were 0-2. What do you think about the Steelers? Specifically, I just mentioned that they have a lot of competition versus someone like the Buccaneers.
I'll tell you this. Am I a Steelers fan? No, I'm a Bills fan. But what I am a fan of is organizations that hold on to coaches that aren't losing coaches. Not every winning coach in the NFL goes to the Super Bowl every year. Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the league's history. He's, I think, the second longest or the first longest tenured coach in the league. He has held an organization together, and he does have control of that locker room. Unfortunately, he had a couple of screwballs in Antonio Brown, and he's got George Pickens right now, who's a baby on the field. So, no one knows what happens inside the building. But what I can say is this: Mike Tomlin has kept that organization competitive ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired, and he did it with next to nothing. And he still wins games, and he made it to the playoffs just last year with a second
Oh yeah,
string quarterback
they were
who
really
stinks.
screwy last year, and they still managed to
Right.
get there.
So, I mean, Nate, and this is no disrespect, but I disagree with you fully. I believe that Mike Tomlin belongs in Pittsburgh. They shouldn't fire him. He's not a losing coach by any stretch of the imagination. He is very consistent on putting winning teams on the field with next to nothing. If you were to put another coach in there, I don't care if you take the best coach in the league, Andy Reid, and put him in Pittsburgh, he wouldn't be able to do the job that Mike Tomlin has done and is doing. So I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. I think he'll be in Pittsburgh for a few more years to come. I think he's going to be there until he wants to leave. And
he'll absolutely be there until he wants to leave. The Rooney's don't fire their coaches, sir.
Well, and that's good. That's a good thing. Look at the Jets. How many coaches have they had in 5 minutes? I mean, firing coaches every year or the Bears, that's not healthy. What is healthy is to have an organization like a Steelers that keep a coach in there long enough to build the culture, keep the culture, have a structure, and be able to win games and get to playoffs where teams with any other average coach wouldn't be able to do. So I humbly disagree with you. I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. I think he's a Hall of Fame coach. And I think he's done it with players that weren't expected to do shit. So, up until now, he really hasn't had solid quarterback play. And Russell Wilson, they brought him there for a reason. He's got the touch with the throw, and I think he's a great match. And I think if the Steelers hit the playoffs, they will make a run, and they will be trouble for
And
some
the
teams,
Steelers
and
were
they could
not
be
bad
trouble
with
for
Justin
not.
Fields. I mean, they were
They weren't
doing
bad,
okay
but
before
they're not
Russell
with
Wilson
Russell.
came in.
Russell Wilson is way more composed than Justin Fields. He's got a better throw. He's got
My
more
point
of a
is
touch.
that they were surprisingly good with a
Oh, yeah,
quarterback
yeah,
that
for
most
sure.
people had considered
For sure.
garbage based on his Chicago performance.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I didn't expect much out of Justin Fields, but when he was in, he was 4-2 for the first 6 games, and he did well. But I think Russell Wilson is a better fit for that offensive scheme, and we've seen it for weeks now. He's tearing it up. He's not done playing football yet, and I think Mike Tomlin does have control of that locker room. I think he's got control of that team, and they're not gonna fire him. Why would they fire him? Who are they going to bring in that would be better? Nobody.
Yeah, that's the
So
question. So you look at the Jets, they fired what's his
Right.
name, and for like a day, everybody was like, "Oh, he's the first Arab Muslim coach," and he was fired. He was escorted out of the building, and then it's like, "Oh, okay, maybe he didn't need to be fired, but clearly there were indicators that you could fire him based on historic precedent, and then it's not a story anymore." Who else are they going to get? That sometimes when you fire a coach, it's not always like with the Chargers. The Chargers are not amazing, but they have had a big turnaround, and they hired perhaps one of the best coaches possible. So, the Steelers aren't going to hire their coach.
You don't
Really
fire
quick,
a
Frankie,
coach
let me jump
to
in
the
here. This is
playoffs.
from CBS News. This is from October of 2023. So, like 14 months ago, something like that. Mike Tomlin ranked 5th best NFL head coach in AP ranking. Andy Reid was again a near unanimous choice by the Associated Press for the top spot among NFL head coaches, receiving 8 of 9 first place votes. By the way, that was a guy who was kicked out of Philadelphia. So once again, sure, not every coach who's fired is a bad choice, but just because you're not getting so far, sometimes going in a different direction is a really bad choice. Bill Belichick got the other first place vote. That one doesn't look so good anymore. He kind of fell apart, right? But he did well before that happened. Then Doug Peterson, Kyle Shanahan, Mike Tomlin, and Nick Sirianni each got second place votes. A total of 12 coaches received at least one vote, including Pete Carroll. That was before he was kicked out. Sean McVay, Dan Campbell, Sean McDermott, and Mike McDaniel. After winning more games than any coach in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles, yet kicked out of the clubhouse. Reid is, this is a year ago, on his way to leaving Sheets to a record, blah, 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 blah. Shanahan is one of 2 coaches in the top 5 who haven't won a Super Bowl. And then let's see here. Tomlin's Steelers. He's never had a losing season in 16 years in Pittsburgh. He received 2 second-place votes and was named on 5 ballots. He has won a Super Bowl out of 2 appearances. So he's, batting 500. So this was a year ago. This was after the season they had last year that was lackluster, but as we pointed out, they got to the playoffs. They'll get to the playoffs this year, by all indications, and you'd think they'll do better than they did previously. So, it's people's perspectives, and Apostate Nate is a local. So, boy, do I like locals who hate their teams. I like that. I like that vibe.
The opinion on Tomlin in Pittsburgh is pretty split. Okay, there's a lot more people in southwestern PA that want to see him, having somebody else sign his paycheck.
You can say the same in Buffalo.
Yeah, I would actually say the because Buffalo has not had the success that Tomlin has had in Pittsburgh before, the last 5 wins, 6 wins or whatever it was, and before this recent loss to the Rams, whatever his name is, can't remember his name. The guy who's the coach for the Bills, what's his name, Frankie J?
John McDermott.
Yes. People were really getting antsy with him and being like, we need another coach. I mean, we've talked about it on the show many times, Frankie, because they've never been to a Super Bowl with Josh Allen. They have had no chance to win a Super Bowl because they haven't even been there. Tomlin has been there twice and won 1. Josh Allen is a top talent. Bills have had the pieces for many years, and it's never come together.
Pittsburgh would want him out of there. Like, why would you want Tomlin out? He's your best chance to win a Super Bowl sooner than later. You fire him, you're starting over.
I will drive him to your favorite football team of choice, personally, for free.
I got to tell you, I understand Apostate Nate's perspective, because I've been telling you for a while, Frankie, that they need to get rid of your coach. And I got to think, after this last win or this last loss to a 6-6 Rams team that's now 7-6, I'm starting to lean towards that again. So I think a lot of the things we've said about Tomlin, or at least a lot of things Apostate Nate has said about Tomlin, makes sense for the Bills coach as well. He rebuilt it. He got it where it is now. I don't think that's debatable. I think he's done a good job of building up the team. Just like you could argue Tomlin has done a good job of not letting the team collapse. Maybe you won't go further than that, but he's done a good job of not letting the team collapse. He's never had a losing season. The question then is, even though he's been to 2 Super Bowls and he's won 1, is he the one who's going to get the Steelers back to the Super Bowl. Same thing with the Bills. The Bills were a bit of a mess. Their coach has built it back up. I'm not taking that away from him. I think most people would agree with that. But is that the same person who's going to get them to a Super Bowl, let alone win it? For the Bills, my answer has consistently been no. For Tomlin, I'm not so sure. I'm much more in favor of Tomlin getting to a Super Bowl and winning one versus the Bills. My hot take right now is that Josh Allen is never going to get to, let alone win a Super Bowl as a Buffalo Bill unless they get a new coach. So my advice to Josh Allen would be do what you can to get a new coach or ask to be traded. But for the Steelers, Russell Wilson, can you imagine if they won the Super Bowl this year, he has to retire. Like, he's had so many troubles with Denver. He has to retire if they win a Super Bowl this year. I think Mike Tomlin, if they win a Super Bowl this year, I mean, he's not super old or anything, but he could call it quits too. Never had a losing season. He would be 2 for 3 on Super Bowl appearances. That's not bad at all.
I would
Your
take
thought?
Mike Tomlin in a second in Buffalo if they fired McDermott. Are you kidding me?
And sometimes, like just like with Andy Reid, so he did a very good job in Philadelphia, but he's doing a better job in Kansas City. I think that's true. I don't think it made sense for him to leave Philadelphia, but at the same time, he's doing better with Kansas City. So Mike Tomlin, whatever you think about him, whether or not you're pro Mike Tomlin or like Apostate Nate says, I'll drive him to any other team. I love your fire. Sometimes just mixing things up can really shake up the wins and losses. So Russell Wilson left Seattle, went to Denver. The opposite effect. Really didn't work. And because Sean Payton, I think, is an asshole, but also Sean Payton, to be fair, coaches want to craft their own team. He wanted to get Russell Wilson out of the picture, and he's having some success now with Bo Nix. But Russell Wilson with the Steelers is working very, very well. They're doing much better than the Seahawks are. That's for sure, at least. Who's to say that the Bills coach, if he went to another team, couldn't have more success? Or if Josh Allen went to another team, couldn't have more success? I'm not saying that they won't have success with the Bills, but that's the really interesting thing. The more I pay attention to the NFL, I don't know about the NBA or the MLB, but it just seems like sometimes really bad trades work out. You're like, why are they getting rid of this player? Why is the coach leaving? And sometimes they work out. Other times, really good trades don't work out. Russell Wilson to Denver. How excited was Denver to get Russell Wilson? I thought they could go to the Super Bowl the first year. They already had the old quarterback coming in with what's his name from the Colts, who went over to Denver. I think they got embarrassed in one Super Bowl. Actually, was it the Seahawks who embarrassed them? But then they finally won another one and he retired. Denver had a history of doing this, and it didn't work out at all. I'm not saying it's Russell Wilson's fault, but it didn't work out. And now it's working out with the Steelers. I'm really excited if Bills fall apart and if they don't do well in the playoffs this year, I say fire your coach. But whatever the situation, I think Josh Allen is such a fascinating player. Well, maybe he doesn't want to leave. I don't know what's in his mind, right? Don't know what's in his heart, as they would say. But if Josh Allen went to another team and was able to kind of start over, I feel like that could be like Drew Brees from the Chargers to the Saints. That could be really fascinating. And that's the thing that's great about the NFL is that players move around so much. They can really overnight change things. And it's so exciting to see people show up mid-season for other teams and to do well or to not do well. It's so fun to watch they say King Henry. Is his name Derrick Henry? The really, really huge running back from Tennessee that now plays for the
Derrick
Ravens.
Henry.
Yeah, Derrick Henry. It's so cool to see him paired with Lamar Jackson, who's a quarterback, who's a good quarterback, but also runs really well. Like, it's so fun to see them run now. And Derrick Henry, he had a lot of success in Tennessee. I think it's only because they fired his coach that he wanted to leave the Titans. But he immediately found a home with the Ravens. And to be fair, probably anywhere he would have gone, he could have found a home as long as the team was good enough. it's just really fascinating to see how this stuff mixes up. I'm not sure that I have a question here, but that's just my hot take. Okay, it's news debate. I'm late. NFL is good, but let's maybe move on to another discussion. Let's jump over to stereo. We have a message or two that was left a while ago. My apologies. I didn't get to them quick enough, but I think it's still along the lines of the discussion we were having before we went to the NFL, which was about the UnitedHealth CEO's assassin. Apparently, looks like it's him, has been captured. He's not going to get away anymore. No e-bike will get him out of prison this time. Let's hear now from Spirit Love on stereo.
Hey Bjorn, long time no see. How have you been? And hey, Mr. Debate. This is actually not a new thing. A few CEOs have been stabbed to death, besides Sean. But he's done some pretty corrupt things, but I don't know if he deserves to be shot in public like that. I don't know. It's kind of like an up in the air thing. I'm not really big a person that condones violence, but a lot of people, they don't like what he did, so it makes sense to them. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it?
Thanks for the messages, Spirit Love. So I think everybody has already come out against murder. So good that we're doing that here on the show. But I got to say, it's really it's made me reevaluate what I consider to be, like, have you seen, is it the movie A Time to Kill with Samuel L. Jackson? And what's his name? All right. Matthew McConaughey plays the lawyer. So the basic story, it's a very old movie. So not giving anything away, but Samuel Jackson's daughter is very, very much hurt by two hillbilly guys, rednecks. And they're captured. And then Samuel Jackson somehow gets an AR-15, M16 type of rifle and just guns them down. And he even hits one of the police officers, and they have to cut off his leg, amputate his leg. And so the trial is, was this killing justified? And probably legal insanity, because he was so overwhelmed with grief because his daughter had been attacked by these two idiots. And in the end of the film, he wins. He's acquitted. However that works, he's acquitted. So that's more of a traditional, maybe we don't like vigilante justice, but we can sort of understand how a father would just go nuts and kill the two men who really, really screwed up his daughter. I know that's very different from a healthcare CEO who makes millions of dollars and has a really big career because his whole life is dedicated to preventing people from getting healthcare. But I think it's on the same spectrum, and I never would have thought that before. Who's jumping in here?
Well, this is MC Funk.
Yeah.
So I do think the way this is viewed and the kind of public perception and people's feelings about it will change or adjust when we get a clear motive. Because we were kind of bouncing around possible motives last time, and one of the kind of prevailing.
Can anybody else hear him? I can't.
Yeah, sorry. MC Funk is here. So Frankie, if you can't hear, you got to leave the show and come back. That's Elon Musk giving you the middle finger.
Yeah. But one of the kind of prevailing theories at the time was that it was likely somebody who had suffered some grave ramifications of insurance, health insurance, shadiness, and kind of maybe his daughter or family member got sick or died or something because claims were denied. And if that's the case, I think that kind of puts it into that sort of camp. But the based on what we're seeing so far, it seems this may be more just kind of ideological in the sense, and less vigilante type, retribution, and more kind of an ideological bent, and in which case that's a different kind of thing. That's more of just like, I'm not giving you payback for like harm that was done to me or my family, but it's more of like, you shouldn't be allowed to be like this and do this. That's just inherently bad, and kind of a demented altruism, if you will.
So you're saying the difference
and that's
between
different.
John Q, that movie that we discussed previously,
Right,
versus Bernie Sanders. So if Bernie Sanders kills a healthcare CEO versus John Q, yeah, that's a big difference.
right. It is, and I think the the initial evidence so far, like, we don't have a motive yet, but the based on like this manifesto of his that they found, seems to indicate that an ideological motive may be likely, but again, we don't know. But I think what that motive is will color the public perception of the action. But I do think, regardless of the motivation, I think that will color the public perception of him, and whether or not his actions were maybe wrong but plausibly justified. But I do think, kind of regardless of what the motive is, there seems to be a public perception that won't change, as to, in some way or another, this guy got what was coming to him, whether it was right or wrong. Like, you F around long enough, well, time to meet, find out.
So earlier in the show, I can't recall if it was when you were here, MC Funk, but I know Frankie J was here because he said, "Hey Lee, you can follow this guy on Twitter." I was just going to bring his Twitter handle up here because he has a 3-picture banner, and one of them appears to be screws that were put in his spine. And Bjorn, as a medical professional, was like, "Oh, I know what that is," and we read all about it. His account has been suspended now during this show. So in like the last hour, I think it would have been the last hour that I had checked his account. His account has been suspended because it was 147,000 followers when I checked it, and I didn't follow it. So I was going to go back and give it a follow so I could go back and look at it later. His account has been suspended.
Yeah, but so, I mean, again, we don't know what the motive is, but I do think the motive, whenever that kind of becomes more clear, will kind of color the public perception of his actions.
Yeah, I think I can maybe get out of that spider's web. I absolutely agree with you. And for a lot of people, I think you're absolutely right. And even for me, if it turns out his son had died of something and he had been fighting United Healthcare for it, that would certainly give me more support for him. But I think at this point, I always rally against healthcare in the United States. We spend more money per capita on healthcare than any other nation, and we have the worst healthcare outcomes. So for me, maybe it's not as important, but I think you're right. For maybe most or many Americans, his reasoning does have essential significance. But I think for me, maybe I'm already past that. I don't know that it does much for me.
Sure. Well, I think the I think it will maybe change the public perception of like him and his actions, but not necessarily the outcome or the kind of. There seems to be kind of universal agreement that the large health insurance companies as a whole, you know, are a stain, to put it mildly. But I mean, this is interesting because it you're really starting to see this sort of thing actually cross political lines quite a bit. A bunch of kind of bigger name, right wing influencers and maybe right wing personalities, and like Ben Shapiro and the like, have kind of been getting raked over the coals by a lot of their kind of followers and listeners when they kind of make some comment regarding like this guy and his like crazy leftist ideas or whatever, and is kind of mass influx of like, this is not a right or left thing, like these people have screwed me, they've screwed people on the left, they've screwed people on the right, and like you're on like this is not a a politically sided thing. How you solve it certainly does seem to be, but there does seem to be a kind of common outcry on that's kind of transcending the right left spectrum here on the miserable state of healthcare practices in the U.S. And that's
you're not
interesting to
wrong.
watch play out.
It's super interesting to watch play out. I'm going to lower the volume over on stereo. We've lost Bjorn, but he's back again. So I'm going to call you, Bjorn. And Frankie, your hand is up.
Yeah, I know it was just a movie, but I did reference John Q 2024. And if you recall the ending of that movie, people were cheering for him because of what he did. So I imagine, and again, don't quote me. I'm Frankie J, and I say some outlandish things sometimes. I would imagine there's going to be a great portion of people that are going to support this guy that killed the CEO of UnitedHealth. There's a reason for everything. He was targeted for a reason. A manifesto was written. This guy had premeditated everything, obviously. Um, you're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I will say that just as a disclosure. But he's going to have a pretty good support group. I mean, look at John Gotti. John Gotti was a cold-blooded killer, and he had all of Queens and New York City celebrating when he would be acquitted. So I can't see this being much different, especially if people have been getting screwed over for years by United Healthcare. So you know what? As much as I'm I'm going to split hairs here. I am not all about murder, but I'm not against vigilantism if it's justified, because he obviously was collecting millions and millions of dollars while people are out there suffering. So what makes what he was doing right? Because he didn't put his hands on somebody and physically kill them, or the guy that took a gun and shot him? I mean, really, what's the difference? He killed more people than we even know by his lack of concern or compassion. So I'm kind of on the vigilante side of this thing. I think he got what he deserved, and I think a lot of detail will come out on this, on why this all happened. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation moving forward, because I think he got what he deserved. And I dealt with that company directly, so I know exactly what they're all about and how they don't care. So it definitely rolls downhill. So hey, he got what he deserved. He effed around too long. And when you take on a position like that, you take on the risks. I mean, that's just my humble opinion, and people can disagree with me and call me a monster. That's okay. That's just how I feel.
Yeah,
So I
oddly
do
enough, sorry. Yeah, MC Funk.
Well, I was going to say, I do think, the people are focusing very much on, because of this incident, on them as a company and kind of what a bad actor they were. But I think it's when you kind of take a step back, they were really just the all-star player in the game. And, the system as a whole is the systemic problem. It's not the major health insurance companies themselves. Like, I'm not absolving them or saying they are good by any means. A lot of them have do like despicable or reprehensible kind of practices, but they are effectively you know being kind of excellent companies in the kind of capitalist healthcare system. And that is the core problem that I think all of this is stemming from, is that our is that healthcare is treated as a capitalistic endeavor, and they're the best players at that. And you I think you can't expect in a system like that for it to I think this is the state that you should naturally expect it to end up in. And it's more of a kind of fundamental change to the system of like how healthcare is dealt with as a whole, that needs to change. And I think just kind of focusing on the particular insurance companies themselves, I think is kind of a red herring. Does that make
I
sense?
agree. Yeah, and you know what? You brought up a great point. Health insurance companies as a whole is a joke, okay? But what's to say that this one man's actions, sometimes they say one person has to die for millions of people to be saved.
There
So
seem
what
to be
happens if
some positive repercussions already.
right? What's to say that because of this happening, that all these other health insurance companies, and maybe including United Health, tighten it up a little bit and start realizing that they have to do a better job? I mean, sometimes that happens. So this guy could ultimately become a hero, believe it or not.
I mean, I would I would I would kind of counter that with the kind of ever increasing frequency of school shootings has produced zero actual change in the underlying causes.
That's a different
Well,
topic.
but
Well, no, but I mean, like, it's
yeah, but I mean, like, guns
it's a
are how
different
we
topic,
formed our
but
country,
like,
and guns are
it
like
goes to the
one second, MC Funk. Guns
yeah.
are a strong backbone of the Republican Party, and as I always say, even the Democrats will never say we're coming for your guns, and that's why one of the reasons I hate them and always will. There's nothing specific about insurance companies screwing over America that Republicans are like, yeah, or Democrats are like, yeah. You can still be for profit, you can still be for companies, you can still be for corporate greed and not have that be in the healthcare industry.
Yeah, but it was more to the point of a a particular tragic event, you know, is not necessarily correlated with a change around said tragic event.
I will agree with that because I think that generally is true, but I think this is different enough that it doesn't matter. So I see what you're saying, but then I'm like, but what about this? I think it's different enough. I think there are going to be people at his trial who are going to be outside supporting him. I've compared it to the Joker sequel when people were doing that for him. If anyone has seen that movie, maybe it won't happen exactly like that happened. But I think people are going to be supporting him. I think people are going to be supporting him to the very end. And it doesn't matter what his what his reasons are. I think that there might be some reasons that will align with well, we all thought that was the case, and not just because of his ideology. But whatever, I think he's already proven. We knew nothing about him, and it was like, oh, he's attractive, and he murdered somebody and got out of town scot-free. And it just happens that some McDonald's person called the cops. The cops did not find him. Oddly enough, it's News Debate. I'm Lee. Oddly enough, this is not the only murder-related story that I had prepared for today. Let me jump over here to YouTube. Do you guys remember that former Marine, or I guess once a Marine, always a Marine? Do you remember that former Marine who choked to death a homeless guy on the New York City subway? Well, it turns out he got away with it. Let's check in with, I'm not sure. It's ABC 7. I'm not sure where this is, but let's hear the update. It's News Debate. I'm Lee. We're not going to hear the update. Give me a moment here. Sometimes this happens, and I just got to refresh. It would have been really sweet if it did work, though. I thought that was a pretty good intro. I thought that was a pretty good transition. Go me. Just didn't work out.
Son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch. Yeah. Oh, this is not working at all right now. Give me a second here. Maybe I'll restart my stream. Ooh, that is strange. Yeah, I'm going to restart my stream. Give me a second. So for everybody who's over on the stream, I'm just going to restart, and it'll disappear, but it'll come back. And that was a really good transition, too. Son of a bitch. Okay, so now, there we are. And here we are. All right, so pretend I said all that stuff. Looks like he got away with it. Let's check out ABC 7.
New York City, a Marine veteran who used a chokehold on a subway rider who died has been acquitted. A Manhattan jury cleared Daniel Penny of criminally negligent homicide in Jordan Neely's 2023 death. Neely died as Penny subdued him with a chokehold because of his erratic behavior on the train. Both applause and anger erupted in the courtroom after the verdict was read this morning. Neely's father and others were ordered to leave after their outbursts. Neely's family spoke outside the courthouse.
I just want to say I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts.
I promised this family that we would get justice. We're still going to do that. We're going to move forward with our suit. The district attorney did a good job, but the jury in this case let us down.
In a statement, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg thanked the jury and vowed to respect their verdict.
All right, it's News Debate. So Daniel Penny, there's video of it after he was acquitted. So they threw out the manslaughter, and then whatever the other thing was, they acquitted him of it. Afterwards, he and his lawyers went to a bar in New York and were drinking, and he was like talking to the media that were there. So he's having a pretty good time. As I mentioned, when this first happened, before he was charged, but he was either taken into custody or he was willingly talking with the police, and then they took him to custody, whatever happened. The the man who was murdered on the train, if you will, who died on the train, I guess is the more technical term now. Very, very quickly, they were like, we miss our son. I can't believe this happened to our son, to our beloved family member. Where the fuck were you when he was homeless and crazy on a New York City train? He wasn't working somewhere and staying with friends and family the week before and then crazy on the train. So that is bullshit. That is a lie. They didn't care about him when he was alive enough to go out and help him or force him to get help. So sorry. Logic shows that you're lying. And then secondly, I get that he was like nuts on the train, but that does not automatically equal you can get choked out. So what does this mean? Is this like a stand your grounds, but with a chokehold? So now if a crazy person is on the train and being crazy and violent, but not particularly like stabbing anybody, that you can just put them in a chokehold? I don't know what that answer is, but I would say we're closer to that than we were before he was acquitted. Those are my two thoughts from that. Yes, Frankie, your hand is up.
Here's another perfect example of, I was a school bus driver at one point, and this might be a little not very good as far as comparison, but students had the right to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. They could pull out a gun and shoot the driver, and they would get away with it. So for me, if somebody's
that's
acting
clearly not true. I mean, so you think it was hard to discipline them, but that's not.
It was
true.
very hard to discipline. Yeah, I was being sarcastic, but what I'm saying here is, if this guy was acting erratic and was posing a danger to everybody else, and this guy acted up or acted to stop the threat, I agree with his acquittal. But for his family, who wasn't there for him when he was at his lowest point, to come out and say they missed their son, what they're doing now is they're just painting the road ahead for a lawsuit, and they're going to exploit the courts to make money off of their son's loss. And that's just disgusting, totally disgusting. This guy probably protected a whole bunch of people, and he's a former Marine. Obviously, they're trained to kill. I don't know if he,
Once a
meant
Marine,
to
always
kill
a
him.
Marine. That's my question.
It's
Do we
true.
say former Marine? Is he still a Marine? I
No,
don't know.
once a Marine, always a Marine. You're always a Marine. But he did something heroic, but because somebody died, he's a villain all of a sudden. But the real villain is the one that's dead. And now all of a sudden the family is so caring and missing of him. And like you said, where were they before? Now they're here after, and they're going to try to clean up, and they're going to try to put a civil lawsuit against this guy, and they'll probably win.
Yeah, they'll probably win. I mean, he'll probably lose a lawsuit. I don't know what that means for him personally, because I don't think he's super rich. So when if you lose a lawsuit and you're Rudolph Giuliani, like, you have a lot of assets. Maybe it's going to be hard to get you to turn them in, which it turned out it was, but you have a lot of assets, right? This guy, I assume he's not destitute, but like, if you win $100 million lawsuit against him, what does he do?
Well, you're not going to get $100 million.
So I don't even know what that means for him, because when you take someone's money in a lawsuit, you can't make them homeless. There's only so much money you can take. So for the rest of his life, his wages will be garnished, maybe at a high level, but he's already become a celebrity. I assume he'll be able to make money off of this, just like anybody who becomes a celebrity can make money off of it. What's his name? The recent guy who was supposed to be the attorney general, once he dropped out of the race, he went on Cameo and started doing Cameo videos. And I mean, like, this guy could make Cameo videos for the next 2 or 3 years before people forget about him and make a lot of money. And even if that gets taken and given to the families of the guy he killed, he's still going to have money. Like Alex Jones, still has money. Rudolph Giuliani has claimed he doesn't have money anymore, and he's like destitute, but he still is not homeless. So I don't know what that will mean for him, but you're not wrong, Frankie. I assume the family talked with the lawyer, and they were like, we hope that he's going to be convicted, even though this is a lesser charge because they threw out the manslaughter charge. But this is what we're going to do when it turns out if he walks free, and that's not necessarily evil. That's just being a good lawyer. But the part that I will agree with you that is just downright regrettable is that the family did not care about him enough to give him somewhere to stay, to force him to get help, because clearly he was mentally ill when he was alive. And since that was the case, I'm not so worried about their feelings now. This is different than the UnitedHealthcare CEO for me. For the UnitedHealthcare, I'm really debating, like, what does justified mean? I think it's very regrettable that the man on the subway died. I don't feel particularly sorry for him, but you can imagine that you could take him down and choke him and prevent him from hurting people without killing him. So that was something that's my question now. Is that okay? Is that legal? I don't know what that answer is. I don't think anybody knows. But the idea that you don't have to sit there on the subway while a crazy mentally ill homeless person is screaming and being erratic and or threatening violence. I don't remember the exact details. I absolutely believe people should do something about that. And that's why I've always supported the mayor of New York, who, despite these allegations that have really mounted against him, has also decided that New Yorkers, and in particular the police, do not have to just watch crazy mentally ill homeless people be crazy and mentally ill on the street. And they can say, we are taking you in and we are going to get you the help that you need. And if the crazy homeless person says, no, you're not, then they arrest them. And I 100% believe that that could have saved the life of this man who was choked to death on the subway, even though apparently that was a legal action. So I agree with you. I think the family's full of shit. Maybe I don't go as far as you do, but I think they're full of shit. And I also think they're going to get a lot of money because, in all fairness, their family member is dead. And I don't think that had to be the case. I don't know what it's like choking someone on the subway. I don't know what it's like to be a Marine and have some skills in that area. I don't know what all that is like. But I got to say, out of him being convicted of any crime versus him walking free the way he just did, and then apparently partying in a bar with his lawyers, I absolutely agree with the let him walk. Don't want to see him convicted because he was not asking for this. Someone was crazy on the subway and he said, not on my watch. Probably went too far. Wish it didn't go that distance, but maybe now, just like with the healthcare CEO who's been assassinated, maybe now, well, New York's going to do something. We don't want people choking out homeless people on the subway. Maybe we're just going to start arresting people who are clearly mentally ill and get them the help that they need, which the mayor was already doing. I don't recall if that was before or after this, but he's been talking about doing that for some time. We've talked about it on the show multiple times. Whatever his crimes may be related to finance and corruption and stuff like that, Bill Clinton got a BJ in the Oval Office. It doesn't mean everything he was involved in is complete nonsense. I would wash my hands after I shook his hand, but I can still support some of the things that he supported, if that makes sense. Anybody else have thoughts here?
I just think anybody in the military, I have friends that are in the military, and there's a good chance that this guy didn't have any intentions on killing this young man or this guy who was acting erratic, but maybe it went too far.
I don't know, man. And I'm not a military trained person, but I feel like someone who knows how to kill someone would be even better at being able to not kill them. I think if you're choking someone out, you can realize that they're not breathing and maybe ease back a little bit.
Sure, but he might have also had a minor. Who's to say the guy didn't have a minor flashback on warfare and having to save his own life. Who knows?
I don't believe
there's a
they've
lot.
ever claimed that, so I'm going to say no.
I'm not saying they did. I'm just throwing that at the wall to see if it sticks. I'm
But
not.
it's useless, so let's not do that.
Okay, fine. I'll take it back. But I'm in favor of what he did. I believe that the jury made the right decision, and that there's one less crazy, mentally ill, potentially dangerous person on the New York subways. So
And
kudos to
what
him.
do you think about this, Frankie? Unlike that United Healthcare CEO who for years, I think 2 decades, if not longer, worked for that company in different roles and made a lot of money by preventing people from getting health care that they need. This crazy homeless guy did not want to be crazy, did not want to be homeless, at least originally, right? A lot of homeless people don't want to get help because they're afraid of the shelters, because they're crazy and paranoid. But I assume at some point in his life, before it started spiraling out of control, he never would have wanted to be homeless and crazy on a subway. So he's not a villain. He represents an actual problem of both crazy people who can harm everybody else who's just on the subway, someone who's been forgotten by society, someone who's been forgotten by New York City, who also was forgotten by his family, to make sure we get that out there. But he's not a villain himself. He is also a victim.
I agree. But most homeless people wouldn't have access to United Healthcare, Independent Health, Blue Cross Blue Shield. They would have access to the minimum, healthcare provided by government assistance. And you're right.
But they don't want it. Yeah, they don't want it.
They don't want the help because they feel like when they get put into an institutionalized situation, even if it's a hospital, they don't like to be controlled. They don't like to be locked down. They like to do what they do. So it's really just like a double-edged sword. So I don't imagine anybody wants to be mentally ill. I don't do that for a second. I think sometimes it's out of people's control, their DNA, their genetic makeup, and sometimes people are just mentally ill. But I just think the whole thing's disgusting. I think the family coming out and acting like they give a shit all of a sudden is even more disturbing than the death itself. It just goes to show you that son of a bitch, what a mess! Like what a mess this this world is right now.
Well, that's where I'll also agree with you, is that this certainly makes a mess of what happened. Because if he had been convicted of any crime, or if he had been convicted of the higher crime of manslaughter, that would have sent a message that if someone is crazy on a train, you cannot stop them. Because what if you go too far? He went too far. He did not need to kill the man. Doesn't mean that I disagree with his actions, but he went too far. Okay. It just snowballed. So what that would have done, if he had been convicted of a crime like manslaughter or something similar, that would have meant that in the future, when someone crazy was on the train, people would be afraid to do something. I think people are normally afraid to do something, but they would have been more so. And eventually that would have meant that someone would have gotten killed and some crazy homeless person would have just, stabbed a bunch of people in the neck. And then we would be like, well, remember that time a Marine tried to do something about it? Not that man who died was going to stab people in the neck, but remember he tried to do something and he's in jail now? Well, that's what you get. And then also, if it had been, I think, a clearer decision of this is definitely allowed now, you would have the overreach. You would have anybody who looked crazy on the train, someone would bash them over the head with something, and then you'd have that problem. But now we're in the middle, and I don't even know what this means. So he's not going to jail. He's probably going to lose a lawsuit, but he's not going to jail. And once again, I think that's the best possible action the courts could have decided. But what does that mean? If someone chokes out someone on the subway tomorrow who was in a similar erratic situation, or even worse, if they had been threatening people with a knife, are they not going to be charged? I think they would be less likely to be charged, but I don't know. It's certainly not going to scare crazy homeless people because they're the part of this equation that don't care about what's going on because they're crazy and homeless. But how are other people going to react? MC Funk,
I'm
he goes to
certain.
New York City like
Okay.
once a month for like a week. If he's on the subway and someone's going crazy, I'm just using you as an example, MC Funk. Feel free to jump in, or anybody else. If they're on the subway and someone's going crazy, do they think, well, I'm more able to intervene than I was before? I think that's generally the result of this decision. But I don't know how much further you can go. Like when what's his name, the kid in the hoodie who was black, and then the neighborhood watch guy who was Latino. The kid on the hoodie like punched him and like jumped on him and started punching him and stuff. You can debate why that happened and whether or not that was justified, but apparently he did assault that man, and then he shot and killed him. That basically told you, well, stand your ground is a thing and you can do this. I don't think that we have that clear of an indication from this. And that's a shame. It would have been better. Maybe that'll come in the future. I don't think we're going to get it though, because as MC Funk knows, if you go to New York, this thing can happen all the time. And it would be nice if at least we knew what the rules were. And I don't know that this has been clarified. I think this is a victory for people to intervene. But other than that, I don't know. What happened with the kid in the hoodie and the guy who shot him, I think that was much more clear cut. Once that was decided, it's like, no, if someone's assaulting you, you can kill them. I mean, like that's a much more, we get what that means. So if anybody has any comments on this, I would love to hear your thoughts. If Apostate Nate wants to throw in, you've been open about your mental health. Your handle is actually Mentally Nathan on Twitter if you want to throw in. Bjorn is a healthcare professional. If you want to throw in your thoughts on this, you don't have to agree or disagree with what I said, but just giving your general thoughts, that would be really useful. Otherwise, this is a CNN article. It provides some more details. A Manhattan jury has found Daniel Penny not guilty of criminally negligent homicide in the death of Jordan Neely on a New York subway last year. Penny also previously faced a more serious second-degree manslaughter charge, but the judge dismissed it Friday at the request of prosecutors after jurors twice told the court they could not come to a verdict. The 26-year-old former Marine, it says former Marine, you're always a Marine, would have faced up to 4 years in prison for a criminally negligent homicide conviction, up to 15 years for a manslaughter conviction. There was applause in the courtrooms. The not guilty verdict was read aloud. Penny locked eyes with members of the jury that acquitted him, nodding in thanks. A smile was visible on his face. Neely's father, who we heard in the video, was present in the courtroom for the verdict and was escorted out after an audible outburst with expletives. So he was like, yeah, you mother... well, he killed his son. The jury deliberated for just over an hour on the criminally negligent homicide charge. On the second-degree manslaughter charge, they deliberated for 16 hours last week before telling the judge they were deadlocked, and another 3 hours Friday before saying they were deadlocked again. The case stems from the death of the 30-year-old street artist. They call him a street artist who struggled with homelessness, mental illness, and drugs on a subway car on May 1st, 2023. Neely entered the subway car and began acting erratically as he threw down his jacket and yelled at passengers that he was hungry and thirsty. It didn't care whether he died. Penny, a passenger, grabbed Neely from behind in a chokehold, forced him to the train floor, and restrained him there for several minutes. When Penny let go of the hold, Neely was unresponsive. He was later declared dead. Several minutes of the chokehold were captured by a bystander on video that spread widely and was played repeatedly in court during the trial. Also, I want to add, I believe at least two other guys were helping this former Marine subdue Neely. I remember seeing them in the video. I don't recall someone, maybe I'm just not remembering, I don't recall someone being like, you're killing him, like what happened with the cop who was kneeling on the guy's neck. But I think a couple other guys were helping restrain the crazy homeless guy. The case polarized city residents, many of whom have personal experiences with disorder on the subways, and raised broader questions about mental health, race relations. Yes, of course, because he was black and the Marine was white, so it's race related, and the line between protector and vigilante. Black Lives Matter protesters have added Neely's name to its roll call of victims by the courthouse, while others have praised Penny for trying to protect others. Prosecutors said Penny acted recklessly and negligently by restraining Neely in a chokehold for so long, even after Neely stopped moving. His defense said he was acting to protect others from a threat. Penny's defense attorneys also challenged the medical examiner's determination that Neely died from a chokehold and suggested the charges were brought because of a rush to judgment based on something other than medical science. Neely's father says the system is rigged. Yeah, I mean, the system is rigged to be on the side of a Marine who stepped in when a crazy homeless man was screaming and telling people he didn't care if he died. If that's what you mean by rigged, then yeah, it's rigged. Because Neely and Penny are not the same person. Daniel Penny was riding the subway. Jordan Neely? Yeah, Jordan Neely was a crazy guy who was dangerous. I'm not saying he was evil, but he was a crazy guy who was dangerous. It's News Debate. I am Lee. Once again, you don't have to, but Apostate Nate, you have been open about some of your mental health issues on the show. I would love to get your thoughts on this, if at all. And Bjorn, you just posted over on Discord that you made some fresh bread. So maybe you're going to be baking. But
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I just, quite honestly, I'm not sure how to approach it. I feel like every once in a while there's like an incident on a subway that just becomes really hard to figure out, and then everybody ends up talking about it. And I think here we are again back on the subway. Was there any credible physical threat to the passengers? Or was this just somebody screaming?
I do not believe Jordan Neely ever mentioned hurting people or had a weapon. No.
So he was being erratic, but no threats, nobody hurt, and someone just goes up.
If someone
and
shouts that they don't care if they die, I would say that's a threat. It's not a direct threat, but it's not a not threat.
Goodness, I don't know how to start thinking about this. I feel like, I mean, mental illness can have some scary manifestations. It's probably why there's still stigma attached to it. Because then everybody who's mentally ill becomes that stereotypical picture of it, Lee. I don't know where the heck to start with this one. I feel like I need to watch the video. It's just, without a credible threat of violence, someone says, I don't care if I die. I guess I just need more context, because if someone says that to me in public, like it could be a threat, but I think I need to know a little bit more. I don't know. Lee, I'm sorry, I'm stuck in the mud here.
I think one of the important facts about I'm using facts too many times. I think one of the important details is the fact that Jordan Neely did not come out and say, I'm going to fuck you guys up, I'm going to kill you. But he did say, like, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, basically life sucks, I'm screaming, clearly crazy, and I don't care if I die. So I think that's the threat that you have to pay attention to, is I don't care if I die. That's a threat. It's not the most direct threat, but that's a threat. If Daniel Penny had come up and just, Steven Seagal level snapped his neck, like comically like that, then yes, he should go to jail. If he had come up and pulled out a gun and shot him, he should go to jail. But he subdued him. There's no debate. He subdued him. And I believe 2 other people were helping him do that I remember seeing in the video, but I'm trying to find the video now. And then he went too far. So, it's like trying to think of a not really similar example.
Sounds like manslaughter.
You do the right decision. Like, this guy was erratic. He made a threat, not the worst threat, but he made a threat. And someone decided, I'm a Marine. I have the tools to do something, and I'm going to do it. I think all of that is justified. Maybe people can disagree, but okay, in my example, it's all justified. I don't think killing him was justified, but that was a escalation of a justified move, in my opinion, that was not a clearly different level of what already had happened. So if he was choking him and then pulled out a knife and stabbed him, that would be an escalation that ends in the same result. The man is dead, but wow, that escalated quickly. He was restraining him, and he restrained him too much. So if I think the initial restraint is justified, the fact that he did too much of it is a very different thought process and a very different, how do we define this? Than while he was strangling him, he pulled out a gun and shot him. So that's why I think he should be innocent, because it was a difficult situation. He's trained to kill. I don't believe they've ever said that his training made him kill him. But as we know, anytime you put someone in a chokehold, it can have lethal repercussions. We've seen that, play out over the last couple of years. And I'm glad he did something. So that's why, even though I disagree with the murder aspect, I'm glad he walked free. And it sounds like the jury agrees. I mean, the jury would not convict him on manslaughter. So the prosecutor dropped it, and they came up with this lesser charge, and he was still found innocent. So does that help you at all decide? And if not, Nate, I apologize. I thought I was trying to make it a little bit more helpful. That's the way I look at it. So does that give you something more to comment on?
I think the one thought right now that's poking in my brain, and I used to work in social services, and have been trained in situations to restrain physical threats from other humans. But and I can't remember the holds. It's been years since I've done this. But I remember we learned more than one way to do it, and every way to do it was absolutely possible without cutting off somebody's airway. It's my opinion that a Marine should know how to subdue somebody without killing them, right?
With your arm around their neck without cutting off their airway? I don't think that's possible.
No. There are different ways to subdue people. In other words, it's not like the chokehold is the only way to do it, is what I'm telling you.
Yes. No, absolutely. That is true. There are different things you can do. Yep.
I don't know, man. I gotta be honest with you. I feel like, if this guy's, former Marine, a protector, this and that, and feels like you can insert yourself, I do think you had better know exactly how much force you should be using, and as is appropriate. I don't like the way this smells. My gut instinct says, Lee, I do not agree with you, but I really need to poke at this more.
So you're over on Twitter Spaces, so this is not going to help you directly, but you can listen to it, I guess. This is a report from a year ago from another ABC7. I think it's a different one. I have no idea. All television stations in the U.S., the local ones are like 5 through whatever, so they're always like ABC 9, ABC 7. Okay. But this one, make sure I can pop it up. This does have details, including the footage from the original incident. It's just not the straight footage because it is a news report. So you might think, well, maybe they're going to uh, not show certain parts of it. This is all perhaps true, but it's better than what we had before, which was nothing. I have played this previously on the show, have not played it recently. This is a 2-hour news report from a year ago of the chokehold. It's News Debate.
I'm Joe Torres. Sandra has the night off. We begin with that disturbing video of a heated exchange between 3 teenagers and a family on an F train in Greenwich Village. This is the girl.
Oh, son of a bitch. I typed in Jordan Neely footage, and it's right now there's a black girl screaming at, I think, a white family. Okay, never mind. Well, that one went over my head. Sorry about that, everybody. This is the problem with trying to do this by the seat of your pants. Okay, I'm going to try to find this, so my apologies. MC Funk writes over on Discord, if this setting were different, say they were at a bar and someone was drunk, belligerent, and yelling at people, and then someone came up and subdued him with a chokehold and he died from it, would you feel differently about the situation? Yes, because if you're at a bar, those are, if you will, not crazy homeless people, and maybe someone gets out of hand and someone is drunk, and they are not crazy, they are drunk. This was a man who was in a position to do any number of things that a normal human being would not do, because a normal human being would not do what he, without debate, did. He came on, said he was hungry, he was thirsty, clearly homeless, clearly crazy, and screamed he didn't care if he died. Normal people will go to a bar and have too many. Maybe they won't get into a fight, but normal people will go to a bar and have too many, and I would say that's not the same thing. But that's a great question. Thank you for that, MC Funk. Frankie J, your hand is up. Let me try to redeem myself with a better video over on YouTube while you talk, Frankie.
All right, let me say this. Every scenario is different. And as far as MC Funk's comment about a bar and someone being drunk, there are exits, there are emergency exits if people feel unsafe and they can get out of the area. Now, when you're in a subway car, however many feet below the surface of the road,
Oh,
and
that's really good. You got nowhere to go.
Where are you going to go? Right? How are you going to escape if this guy is going to end up becoming a danger? And all he's doing is yelling, I don't care if I'm going to die. And he doesn't brandish a weapon. Who's to say he doesn't have a bomb in his pocket? So to kind of not, to kind of debate what Nate was saying, I struggle with mental health every day. And what I can tell you is this, is if I'm on a subway train with no escape route and I'm underground and some crazy asshole comes on screaming all that stuff, I'm going to be thankful if somebody subdues him. Now, did it escalate a little too far? Obviously, but the jury found him, not guilty and acquitted him. So there had to have been some factors of that brought into the jurors' room as well. There was nowhere for anybody to get away from a potential danger. So that's just my point.
I didn't even think about that, Frankie. That is excellent. If you're on, if you're in a subway car, you have nowhere to go. It's like if there's a fire in a bar, I could imagine a lot of people are killed. But if there's a fire in a bar, worst case scenario, you break the window and you're out on the street. In a subway, if you break the window, you're out on the actual track, and it's like weird. So like people probably don't want to do that. There's nowhere to go easily. In a bar, there's always places to go easily. Like you have to imagine a bar that's so packed. Like, if someone is fighting in a bar and someone pulls out a knife or pulls out a gun, you have to be like really close to all that. But if they do that on a subway train, you have nowhere to go. So that is a clear difference. I did not even think of that. Thank you for that example. That is a really important example. I'm not able to find the straight video just because so many new videos are popping up because he has been acquitted. So this is surprisingly difficult. My apologies. If I would have done this before the show, if I would have thought of doing this before the show, I would have been able to find it. But what I have found is this is a video from a month ago, and it's talking about how people from the subway, eyewitnesses from the subway, are testifying in the trial. So they already testified in the trial, basically. And it does show a little bits of what happened on the subway train. And I think this is going to be the best that I can do on the fly. So let's bring this up. Great. Okay. This is some local TV station. Let's check out YouTube. It's News Debate.
Emotional testimony today in the subway chokehold trial of Daniel Penny. Jurors hearing about the final moments of Jordan Neely's life. A strap hanger testified that it looked like Penny, a Marine veteran now charged with manslaughter, was holding Neely just too tight. Prosecutors showed dramatic video to jurors of a man bending down over Neely, who was motionless on the subway floor as Penny looked on. Here's Darla Miles.
Another high school student on her way home from school testifying Thursday morning at the Daniel Penny trial. Morielen Sanchez calling 911 after seeing everything go down on that Uptown F train last May.
So there was a guy in the train saying that he's ready to go to jail. He was going to harm people in the train. So a guy.
So that's new. This is the text. It's written here, but you just heard it. So a high schooler says there was a guy on the train saying that he was ready to go to jail. Okay. We've already established that. He was going to harm people on the train. He was going to harm people on the train. So a witness who had no reason to elaborate on what the guy was saying, no reason to lie, said he was going to harm people on the train. I'm going to go back here a little bit so we can hear the entirety of this. Also, the part of the video that I'm frozen at now, it shows the Marine choking him. He's still active. He's not limp yet because there's another man with a baseball hat and a backpack who is holding his hands down so he cannot fight the Marine. There is a third person who's standing above both of them, just watching and not intervening. So these are three people who decided it was necessary to subdue someone. One is actively doing it. That's Daniel Penny, who's been acquitted of any crime. There's another man who's holding the guy's hands down so he can't fight Daniel Penny. And there's a third man who's literally just standing there and looking down and watching. Then this is what one eyewitness said.
On that Uptown F train last May.
So there was a guy in the train saying that he's ready to go to jail. He was going to harm people in the train. So a guy who stepped in and now he's holding him down.
The 18-year-old telling the court initially she was relieved when Penny took Neely down. Defense attorneys asking her, were you afraid that Jordan Neely would get up and make good on his threats? Morielen Sanchez answering no. You didn't think he was holding him overly tightly, did you? Sanchez answering yes. You did think that? Sanchez again answering yes. Another strap hanger, Johnny Grima, testifying he tried to intervene after seeing Neely was not responding, telling the court today, I told him to roll him over on his side so he don't choke, saying, I tried to pour water on his forehead, but Daniel Penny said stop. He said stop. That moment of Penny preventing Grima from pouring water on Neely's forehead, seen here in cell phone video. And a 38-year-old woman, a prosecution witness with testimony supporting defense arguments about Neely's behavior, testifying, I assumed he was having some sort of mental breakdown, that his threats were very traumatic and very believable, and that everyone was frozen. I truly thought I was going to die. Defense attorney.
I thought I was going to die. Let's go back. I thought I was going to die.
Testifying, I assumed he was having some sort of mental breakdown, that his threats were very traumatic and very believable, and that everyone was frozen. I truly thought I was going to die.
I gotta tell you, I must have missed this. I must have seen the initial coverage and then not paid much attention, and then only seen what just happened now when the man quitted. But I am actually even going to go back on some things I said previously. I absolutely believe the man did not have to die. I think Daniel Penny went too far. But at this point, seeing what eyewitness testimony actually says about the fear people had and how someone said, I truly thought I was going to die, at this point, I don't care. So he definitely went too far. But anytime you put someone in a chokehold when the people around you think that they could be harmed, and someone thought that he was making threats to harm people on the subway, and another person said everyone was frozen, which means no one was doing anything. So literally everybody thought that he would just be able to do whatever he wanted. I truly thought I was going to die. I think Daniel Penny did the right thing. He went too far, but I don't care. I'm really going further on what I said earlier. Let's finish up this video.
Defense attorneys for Daniel Penny left court frustrated today, accusing the prosecution of introducing evidence they were told not to introduce, also saying the court is allowing inflammatory statements about their client. They asked for a mistrial. That motion was denied.
Wow. It's News Debate. I am Lee. Holy cow. That is rather different. So I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, Apostate Nate, but we have some more context here. My opinion has gone even more in favor of Daniel Penny now. Do you have an update on your opinion?
I do think that that makes the waters a little bit muddier for me. I have to confess that I'm very much new to learning about this case. I mean, I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm just learning about, the whole. I've been unplugged from a lot. If you want to talk about mental health, I just haven't been as plugged into the news over the past couple years as I should have been. I guess the thought that I still can't get out of my brain is there's different ways to do it. And Lee, I don't know. I love to have juicier opinions.
Since you described some training you've had to learn to subdue someone without murdering them, what's a way you could do that? I've never had that kind of training. So what's the way that you would take someone down who was threatening to harm people to the point that someone thought they truly were going to die? How do you take them down without making yourself more likely to be harmed? Because you don't know that they don't have a weapon. So how do you do that? He's behind him. He came up behind him and put him in a chokehold. So he was in that position. It could have been that he was in front of him and maybe it would have turned out differently, but he had been behind him. So that made it easier for him to put him in a chokehold. What's another way that could have worked?
So Lee, if you were to ask me this question in between 2006 and 2013, I would have been able to remember some of the various ones for sure. I had annual training on this stuff. I seem to remember one of them somewhat involved sort of a twisting of the arm with kind of a knee very, very uncomfortably placed up into the back, something like that. But boy, I just don't remember it enough to give you any actionable information. I know that it was very important that we learn these things because holy cow, restraints were to be used rarely in that line of work. And you really did have to use them by the book. There was no wiggle room for using a restraint improperly. So what I can tell you is that they didn't even think about teaching us anything that would restrict the airway. I used to work for a company, I think it's renamed now, but it was called Turtle Creek Valley MHMR Inc. This is located in the Pittsburgh area, and they used to have people from Allegheny County's, I think, Department of Health and Human Services come and train us on the appropriate holds as well as a variety of other things. Some holds, to be fair, worked much better if you had two people. Of course, this particular individual did have some allies, but then you have to go into like, okay, who's trained on what kind of a hold and
Well, he
so
had
forth.
allies after he put him in a chokehold and he was down on the ground.
Correct. I think, Lee, I just don't know. I think you're a little happier. I think you're a little happier with the verdict than I am, but I don't feel like I know enough yet. I feel like if I
here's some
land
food for thought.
too hard here, I'm gonna land somewhere that doesn't line up with what I'm gonna learn in the next 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Sure,
I gotta be
get
careful
that.
here.
That's always a good feeling to pay attention to. So I totally get it. I asked ChatGPT, what's a way to restrain someone without choking them? You have joint locks, wrist locks, arm locks, finger locks. That's a bold move. Takedowns. You have a leg sweep, a hip toss, body control takedowns. So like if someone's coming at you, like turn and throw them, I guess, redirect their momentum. Pain compliance techniques. So pressure points, soft tissue manipulation, restraining holds, like a bear hug, a full Nelson. Oh, yeah, I guess he could have done that. Arm pinning. You can use distraction or disorientation. And then, of course, things like pepper spray, a stun gun, or a laser, a baton. You can use verbal commands to de-escalate and redirect. I just I don't know if any of this is likely when you have someone who knows how to take someone down in a lethal way, and that's not their goal. They don't come up there and break their neck like Steven Seagal, but they come up and react because people around them thought they were going to die. I don't know that it's reasonable for someone to then, not saying you apostate, Nate, but I don't know that it's reasonable for us to go back and say, well, could you use a finger lock or a leg sweep or perhaps a hip toss? Did you think about applying pressure to pressure points? Maybe a little soft tissue manipulation. It reminds me of if you've ever seen the Miracle on the Hudson movie. I can't remember what it's called, but it was Tom Hanks, right? He plays the pilot Sully Burger or whatever. And so they had both engines of the plane knocked out, like as they were taking off or whatever, because they hit birds. And he landed it on the water. But afterwards, they did a bunch of recreations of what happened in like flight simulation machines that they use for training. And they found over and over again that, oh, he could have landed here. He could have landed there. He could have landed there. But what they failed to account for was that as soon as the engines were damaged, they like started a timer and they knew how much speed they had and what was possible. And they said, well, if immediately when the plane was hit, if he would have turned in this direction, they could have landed on land. If they turned in this direction, they could have landed on land. But what they failed to account for, and if I remember correctly from the movie, this is what eventually made it so that he was not a villain anymore and he could be celebrated for saving everyone's lives. The engines were hit. He had no reason to believe that everything was over at that point. The engines were hit. He had to assess what was going on. He had to talk to his co-pilot. He had to play around with the controls and see what was going on. And then as it was very clear that they needed to make an emergency landing, his mind had to think, what does that mean? Can I make it back to this airport? Because it's DC, there's airports in the area. Can I make it to a nearby airport? As his mind is working very quickly, because he was a talent, but he was human, that took time. And eventually he said, I'm just going to land this in the water. And it worked out. So if you go back in hindsight and try to say, okay, all of this is happening, what are the once again, not calling anyone out, What are the non-lethal ways of dealing with this? Well, first off, we're sitting here however long it's been since it happened thinking about this. We're not in the subway with people thinking that they're going to die, with a man who is threatening that he's going to harm people on the subway. And as Frankie J pointed out, they're underground. There's nowhere for them to go. So when someone reacts, they don't have the benefit of all of this time. Also, I'm sure he was somewhat scared. Even as a Marine, he was on alert. The people around him were scared. This was a scary situation. There's no way to create that. So racing through his mind is that this man is making threats. That seems clear, to the point that people thought they were going to be killed. How can I stop this from happening? Rather than, how can I stop this from happening in a non-lethal way? And to be honest, if you put someone in a position of a wrist lock or a hip toss or all these different things, I don't think it has the same effect on them as choking them out does. And it's hard for me to discount that someone would think that as well. As someone who's not trained at all, if I had enough strength to think that I could do it and someone was being nuts, my first move would be a chokehold as well. I'm not a Marine. I don't have training. I don't think that's absurd given what we know of this situation. And again, the more I learn about this situation, the more I think, well, it's a lot more justified than I originally thought it was. MC Funk is listening, but he's not able to join us via voice anymore by Twitter Spaces. He writes on Discord, to play devil's advocate, I thought I was going to die is the defense of every police officer involved in an unjustified shooting. The question shouldn't be if they were afraid for their life, but whether that fear was reasonable or justified. I'm not saying it wasn't, just that the fear itself shouldn't be enough. It's a good point. What's interesting is that in a state like Florida, it would be enough. If you thought your life was in danger and you're armed, stand your ground laws literally allow you to kill the person. So it depends on where in the United States you are. But I think the point of having eyewitness testimony saying that they were afraid, he was saying he was going to harm people on the subway, and someone said that people were frozen and she truly thought she was going to die. I think that means that they're trying to demonstrate that so many people were afraid and threats were being made that the fear was reasonable and it was justified. So I get what you're saying, but I think the fact that they're bringing this up is they're trying to show that. All right, let's reset, and maybe that'll be the end of the show. We've gone 3 hours. All right, it's News Debate. I am Lee. Bjorn has dropped. He's no longer with us over on stereo. And Frankie J just dropped. I was going to ask him for final thoughts, but he's no longer with us. So I guess we'll do Apostate Nate and then maybe wrap up the show. Any final thoughts, Apostate Nate? Always great to have you.
Thank you, Lee. I wish I guess I should apologize for. I guess I don't really know. It's never fun to say that you don't really know where you land on something. Although, maybe if we were more honest, we would be saying that more often, right? Tempting to just keep babbling rather than just saying, huh. I suppose my instincts in a lot of ways don't like it, but you haven't raised a single point that I would consider terrible. And I feel kind of mentally deadlocked on this. And I was sort of, obviously the jury had a lot more information than I did, but just listening to this from a cursory level, much of it for the first time, I guess what I was thinking from much of the discussion was, I can understand why this was hard for them. I think that's kind of my closing thought. I know it's not much for one, but here I am.
No, it's much appreciated. I always dig the honesty. And I'm going to share this one last time over on Twitter. Luigi Mangione, I forget how you pronounce it. I checked his account earlier in the show because Frankie J told me, and I think it was either 75,000 or 175,000 followers. It may have been 175,000 followers. I didn't follow them. And maybe like half an hour ago, something like that, I checked it again and it was suspended. And I mentioned that on the show. I've just checked it a final time. I am now following the man who, this appears to be the legit account of the guy who killed the UnitedHealth CEO, but we say alleged, because it has tweets from years ago. If you make a new account, you can't just hack Twitter so that your tweets are old. The account is back. I'm not sure what happened. It was suspended and now it's not. So it is back. Word to the wise. Really great to have Apostate Nate. Thanks for joining us as always, friend. You're always welcome here. As well as MC Funk, who was joining us on Twitter Spaces with his voice and then let us know he was leaving and is just posting now over on Discord, and Frankie J and Bjorn. And was that all the Patreon supporters today? We also had friend of the show Glenn, who joined us from Canada land. And it's great to have everybody. I'm not sure when the next show is that I'm going to do. I will schedule it over on Twitter Spaces and post it in my Discord server when I do. So that's twitter.com/NEWZ debate, and also go to bit.ly/NEWZ debate. That's bit.ly/NEWZ debate. There will be an invite link for you for my Discord server if you'd like to join us on Discord. Big thanks to all my Patreon supporters like Apostate Nate, Bjorn, MC Funk, Frankie J, Better Vibes, Lola, Shannon, Mojo, Sneaky Elbow, Ron, Natasha, Nick, and Patrice. It is so great to have your support over on Patreon, and Patrice specifically has made quite a large presence felt over on Patreon. So because of that, I am doing more shows this December. She has really supported the show as of late. So I'm doing a lot of shows in December, and I've also started a voice message and text message system. So you can send a text message or leave a voicemail at 323-250-0867, 323-250-0867 during the show or even in between shows, and that content will make its way into the program. Big thanks to everybody. Have a good rest of your day, and see you next time. Bye-bye.